welcome to a discussion where we're all going to be talking about the games that we've played this year. And did we like or not like them?
Try and sound more enthusiastic if you can.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to please introduce yourselves, everyone. I'm assuming we'll start with you. We'll start in alphabetical
We're not in the same.
order.
You can't just say you.
We'll start with you. I'm pointing. Alphabetical order, please. So I am Jazz, the host. Pleasure to meet you all.
I'm Otis. Hi.
Hey, I'm Matt.
And I'm Bad News Tom.
Oh.
But I've got some good news. We've got some decent games, sort of.
Yeah, to be fair though, I do think everyone's in the same boat in that this year wasn't exactly great for the amount of games. I think Yahtzee put it right in his latest video, in that this is just going to be the year where everybody calls it, oh yeah, the year that Elden Ring got released. That's about it. There's nothing else of major note.
I played a few games, but I played those few games a lot.
Fair enough.
Is the gist of the year.
Yeah. Let's start with you, Tom, and let's start with an early game that came out this year. Let's talk about Kirby, shall we?
Yeah, I guess it was early. I didn't realise how long ago this game already actually came out, but I think it was back in March. So Kirby and the Forgotten Lands is the first proper 3D game in the Kirby series, which is mad because the series is 30 years old now this year. In 2022. So there is another Kirby game on the Switch called Kirby Star Allies, and it's absolutely awful. And then following up, there was a lot of hype around this because nobody really knew how a 3D Kirby game was going to work. Turns out the way it works is a little bit like Super Mario 3D World, except far better in every way. So Kirby and the Forgotten Lands is an absolutely brilliant game. It's basically got all of the qualities that you'd expect from the 2D games when the 2D games are at their best. So it's really colourful, really energetic, lots of personality. But basically the way it works is you can get power-ups and then use them, but there's somewhat of a auto-aim system involved. So that kind of gets rid of a lot of the issues that aiming would have in 3D, which is something that I was worried about. But basically the level design is absolutely amazing. It starts off slow in the first world, but from the second world onwards, there's an incredible amount of freedom in terms of different paths that you can take, lots of side challenge rooms. And then there's also some extra systems, such as the power-up system has been changed this time in terms of you can actually select a power-up from the hub world once you get it for the first time, and then you can actually upgrade it. So you can have permanent upgrades to your power-ups and then select them from the hub world, which is something that I'm amazed that this series has never done before. There's a few things it gets wrong. One of the things is, so it's not surprised to say that it's relatively easy, but it sort of becomes broken if you play it the wrong way or play it the right way, however you see it. So what I mean by that is you can buy buffs from the hub world, which increase your power and speed, and you can stack them. So if you want, you can use those buffs to just break the levels. You just become ridiculously powerful, ridiculously fast, and you can just blast through everything. My recommendation would be to just ignore them, but I don't think it's fair to get the player to regulate their own gameplay. So if you want to break the game, you can do that easily. I also think that the Colosseum is pretty rubbish. It's a feature that's in every Kirby game where there's a boss rush mode, but it's really bad in this one because it's far too easy. But there's also extra levels called the Treasure Road, and they're some of the best levels in the game because it's basically you're forced to use one power-up and you have to get to the end within a time limit. And those are some of the most interesting levels in the game, because even though they're short, you have to master the level and it can be really difficult to complete it within the time limit. Overall, it's a strong contender for the best game in the series. I think the only games that are better than it are the two 3DS ones and maybe Kirby 64. But Kirby and the Forgotten Lands, if you was to rank it in the 3D Mario games, it would be well above 3D Land and 3D World, miles above it, even though that it's most similar to them. And I'd put it above Odyssey and Sunshine as well.
Funny, I didn't know.
idea.
I didn't realize you liked it that much. I've seen like clips and stuff from it. It looks okay.
Yeah.
It kind of is it not just Kirby again? I feel like
It looks like fucking Nier Automata modded with Kirby in it.
Yeah, the weirdly
You're right.
apocalyptic. But then again, I mean, I suppose you could always say that like Kirby has always had that sort of like your Shiver Star and all that is just like Earth. But I mean, because the only other 3D one that I could think of was 64. Is anybody else?
That's just those 2D,
That's not
2.5D.
3D.
Well,
Yeah.
Right. So when Tom says it's the first 3D, he means like where you're not
can
moving across a
actually
2D
move, yeah.
plane. It's a 3D space you run in, like
I've heard it's
just a
pretty
2D
fun.
plane.
If you look at the footage, it just looks like a normal Kirby game, but in 3D. But in reality, like, because it takes ages to finish each individual level because there's so much packed in. So there's a bunch of Waddle Dees that you can. So the goal of the game to get 100% is to save all the Waddle Dees. A bunch of them you find throughout the level, but they're hidden really well. But then others are in secret rooms, and then you also get a bunch for completing certain objectives, such as like finishing the level without getting hit by certain enemies and stuff like that. So there's so much content packed into every single level, and there's like so much care in each level in terms of the design. It's just like it's 10 times better than 3D World and 3D Land. It's like seriously, like you could not ask for a better Kirby game in 3D. I'm not saying it's like one of the best games ever, because I don't think any Kirby games qualify for that. But in terms of if you were to make a Kirby game in 3D, you literally couldn't ask for any better than Forgotten Lands. Like, I can't believe how well they executed what they were trying to do.
I mean, that sort of does raise a little bit of a point. I mean, because there's so many Kirby games, though, there's at least like 1 or 2 a year. Like, this one was sort of like, oh, it's another Kirby game to me. I sort of didn't really care. And then people were like, oh, this is a good one. And, I don't know, I found it just because there's been so many in the past, I found it a little bit hard to care, if that makes sense. Like, it wasn't like branded as like a remake or a redux or like a big brand new vision. It was just like, oh, a bigger budget Kirby game. But then there'll be like another 8 coming out probably in the next 2 years, remakes and stuff. So
yeah, I mean, obviously these games aren't. I'm right in saying these games aren't Nintendo developed. Are they? Who?
It's HAL.
HAL, of course it is, But normally in a Nintendo consoles lineup throughout its lifetime, the Kirby entries are normally like kind of B games. They're not the big hitters normally on the consoles. I think Forgotten Lands was at least positioned, especially I remember like the E3 trailer when it was first announced.
Where it got a bit of hype around it. Kind
of as a big deal, and kind of as this is going to be a serious one. Where look at all the changes we've made, and we're putting some money into this, and it's going to be a big hitter in the lineup for whatever season when that came out. So yeah, I've not played it, but glad to hear that it's good. That it's a decent game.
Yeah, it got more attention than most Kirby games because throughout like Nintendo's entire history, the Kirby games tend to get released at the very, very end of a console's lifespan. For example, Kirby 64 came out in 2001. Kirby's Adventure on the NES came out in 1995.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously the SNES had been out for ages, and this would be the case again with Forgotten Lands because we are this year 6 years into the Switch, and obviously last year 5 years, but that's nowhere near the end of its lifespan, so it was in a kind of better position this time.
This is an actual game that was out on the Switch, which is a rarity nowadays. I mean, to be fair, the Switch is basically in its death knolls now. It's like we got Pikmin 4, we got the new Fire Emblem, we got Zelda. We're done after that, basically. So.
Well, I've got 3 more Switch games coming up, mate.
Oh, have you? Well, actually, that weirdly brings us on to another overstuffed series, and that would be we could have Pokemon Legends Arceus and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet if you want to talk about them.
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all, let's just say, I think it's kind of hilarious that they've both come out. They both come out in the same year, right? Of course they did, and both come out on the Switch.
January and November.
Yeah, obviously they bookended the year. Like there was a one at the start, one at the end. But it is hilarious now that even if it's coincidental this time, we've got like more than one Pokemon game a year. It's not even just one anymore. It's more than one. We had one in Jan, and then we had one in November. I only played
Just to actually go for. I mean, if you remember, I think it was October and November last year. There was Brilliant, Diamond, and Pearl. And so, in the space of literally like 12 months, it's literally been 3 mainline games. But even then, it's like 2 main new entries. It's very bizarre.
That's my point. Like, obviously, we always have like a remake chucked in there now because apparently we have to, and that's this cycle. But it's just funny that we had 2 mainline ones in the same year. So I played a lot of Legends Arceus. I didn't play. God, what were they called?
Scar shit and Violet shit.
Scarlet and Violet. I didn't play those. I played Arceus. I won't talk forever on this, but what my feelings towards I'll talk more about the general direction that Pokemon has gone, right? Because Arceus and Scarlet Violet are changes, and considering the snail's pace in which the Pokemon franchise accepts change, they're quite seismic ones. Like these are quite a big departure from the regular formula when you compare them to the previous games. Arceus definitely feels a lot like a test. Nintendo's testing the waters here to see, do people like this? Because they didn't call it. They didn't have 2 versions. They didn't call it 2 colors or a black and white or a Scarlet Violet or whatever. They called it Legends Arceus. It was clearly. I felt like it was clearly a safety, like a safety net if it didn't go well. If the fan base didn't like it, if they were rejected, then they could go back just to the normal traditional style, but they didn't get away with it. All right, that was a spin-off. It was a spin-off all along. We called it Legends Arceus. It's a Legends game.
Yeah.
Right? But by the sounds of things and by the looks of things, well, especially considering how Scarlet and Violet turned out, this is the direction Pokemon's headed in now. So I think first thing I'll say is that it gets brownie points, at least from me, for trying. Okay, I mean, I know that sounds like a low bar, but when you look at kind of where the franchise is at this point, it gets brownie points from me for trying. They tried something different here. The way the open world works, the structure of it, they changed obviously the catching mechanics and the battling mechanics, and these are changes we hadn't seen before in the franchise. That's kind of where my brownie points end. For Legends Arceus especially, it just feels very underbaked. And when I say that, I almost want to say unfinished, but I don't want to say unfinished because sometimes, like when a Bethesda game comes out and it's like full of glitches and the story's missing, especially I don't know, Fallout 76 and that lot, right? Sometimes in a way you might say a Bethesda game feels unfinished because it's full of it crashes all the time and it's full of game breaking glitches and textures are everywhere, whatever. That's what people I think come to their head when you say unfinished. Legends Arceus is not that. It is polished in the sense that everything works how it should. It doesn't feel like there's bits missing or anything like that, or it doesn't break, it doesn't crash, it doesn't glitch out. However, there's just no content. There's 4 open maps, and they plop the Pokemon in there, and they walk around, and then you walk around and you catch them, and then you do some fights. That's kind of it. There's no towns, there's no NPCs, there's no gym leaders, etc., etc. A lot of this changes in Scarlet and Violet, but for Legends Arceus, it kind of felt like it needed another year or 2 in the oven. Like it feels like a good bare bones. It feels like a basis. It feels like a foundation, and then it needs, it's Pokemon. It needs towns and cities and things to do, and not just open landscapes. Empty open landscapes to walk around in and throw balls at things. Now, with Scarlet and Violet, those elements have been woven in, and we're slowly getting there. But the final point I'll say on this, my final thoughts on this is that I feel like if they went away, and obviously this is ignoring financial reasons, the Pokemon franchise sells gangbusters, so it'll never happen. But just ignoring the financial element, if they went away and they said, okay, we're going to try this Legends Arceus style game. We're going to spend 3 years on this, and we're going to pack it with content, and it's going to have gyms, it's going to have cities, and have things to do, as well as the change in direction. I reckon I'd be much more impressed by it. Instead, it feels like we're kind of getting a slow drip feed here. Year 1 is Legends Arceus. where, or game one. I was going to say year one, but these games came out in the same year.
You mean like playing FIFA 20 compared to FIFA 15?
Exactly. It's like a slow iteration. Game one is just the bare bones. There's just 4 maps or whatever. Some open maps you walk around. That's Legends Arceus. Game Series 2, it's Scarlet and Violet. We've taken the concept from Game 1. We've added a few more bits in there, which should have been in the first game. Then there's going to be next year. There'll be the third game in the Arceus formula where they'll add a few more bits in. And I think eventually Game Series 5 or 6 will probably have a fully fledged experience here. But the problem is that you've already seen and already gotten used to, and may have even already gotten bored of the new formula by the time Game 6 comes around and it's finally.
I was going to say, do you think by that point no one will want to play it anymore? Do you know what I mean? By that point, there'll be no enthusiasm for it at all.
Here's the thing. I mean, I could literally sit here and bash Pokemon all day. In fact, I'd love to. I've got a raging hard on to do it. But the series itself it's the highest selling Pokemon game probably of all time, and it probably will be Scarlet and Violet. And half of that definitely due to the Switch. But I mean, I've looked into this. Most of them have really high scores. Scarlet and Violet does not have high scores. How much so will they be able to keep I'm interested in what they do for the next game, because are they going to continue doing it at such a quick pace? And it's not so much that I'm not in the fucking habit of handing out brownie points for doing something different. That's unacceptable to a level of quality that should be expected from the highest grossing franchise in the fucking world, over Winnie the Pooh and fucking Hello Kitty. It is fucking unacceptable. And
Sonic the Hedgehog.
And Sonic the Hedgehog, of course. But barring the glitches, barring all that, it's like they don't have anyone who knows how to design games, because, like you say, with this the 4 maps, barren open landscapes with nothing to do in them, they just plot Pokemon on. It almost sounds like someone at Game Freak or Pokemon Company went, oh, what's something people have been talking about since 2005? Oh, an open land, an MMO, or an open area place. Well, let's just do that. Instead of like looking at contemporary games that actually do open well and do them well, and make the maps dense, have different types of challenges, etc. They literally just like stop it at the bare minimum. It's the bare fucking minimum. And then when you get, 9 months later, or 10 months later, Scarlet and Violet come out, they do a little bit different, a little bit more with the open world, but still forgetting to actually do any game design with it. Like, I still can't believe that they didn't do any level scaling. If they're going to do gyms that you can challenge it, or quests you could do in certain order, they didn't do level scaling, and so it completely just defeats the. I cannot believe that it made it past like any screening in pre-alpha by anyone, that someone didn't just point these things out and say, actually, wait a minute, this isn't. It reeks of cheapness. It reeks of lack of care, and the fact that literally it will sell as much as it can, so why the fuck do they need to care? And
I'm starting to think that there might actually be kind of a process involved where they are just seeing what they can release, because
they can get
the
away
reason
with.
The reason why I say that is when I watched your video, which is on the OrangeJuiceJaz YouTube channel.
Thank you very much.
When I watched your video on Scarlet and Violet, thanks. On Scarlet and Violet, the thing where when you go into the shops, it just goes to a black screen, and then you can select the items, rather than they didn't actually animate. They didn't render a shop.
Yeah,
where,
they're just stripping
in
things out
2005
from previous games. They're just stripping them out. What's the cheapest? What's the quickest little thing we can put out? Yeah. Slap Pikachu's face on it. They'll fucking eat it up, and it is unacceptable.
I'll be slightly at the inside of the buildings.
Yeah, I'll be slightly nicer here. Look, I do agree with you, but I feel like, and of course it's their choosing, so that they're their own makers. But I feel like it's all about the cycle, the yearly release cycle. They got to get out a Pokemon game once a year. That's what they do now. And also they got remakes in the background they're making as well. So the B team or whoever's probably either the B team's making the remake, or they focus on one for 1 year and they switch to the remake for the next, and they switch back to a mainline game. Or there's some, there's a lot on here. They've got to get a game out a year for the mainline game, and they've got to get the remakes out. And because they're under the watch of Nintendo, they can't release games which are broken or messy or just don't work, which is obviously a low bar to achieve, but fair enough. And because of all those factors together, it means they just start stripping out stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe someone at Game Freak said, hey, let's do this big open world and let's think about level scaling. Let's think about putting NPCs in and cities, and why don't we do some co-op elements and stuff? I'm sure all of these things were...
Yeah, I'm sure that happened, yeah.
No, but I'm sure all of these things were tabled out for Legends Arceus. I'm sure they had a laundry list of things that they could do.
Sure.
I'm sure a lot of the developers there at Game Freak were ecstatic to finally get away from the traditional model and be able to do different things. And then, once they have their laundry list, they say, well, we got to get Arceus out in 9 months, so we'll cut it down and we'll save this co-op and cities and NPCs for Scarlet and Violet, and then we'll do these other things for the next one, and we'll do these other things for the next one. You already said it's like FIFA, and I kind of feel that it is. Pokemon's in a way a bit like
Pokemon is exactly like FIFA. Yeah,
they're like sports franchises where I'm sure they have all these launch lists of ideas that they want to implement in the game, but they have to do it slowly because they have to put a game out on a cartridge once a year, and they're therefore, and like I said, I'm sure eventually you're going to get a fully fledged game which might be good, but the impact of that game is going to be lost because we've had 6 before it which have kind of been a snail's pace to gradually rise up to it. I don't know, maybe if you're the type of person that waits 6 years in between Pokemon games, if you don't play Arceus and Scarlet Violet and or the next one or the one after that, and you pick up the ones after that and it's all new to you, then maybe the impact's there and you'll love it. But yeah, I mean, because of the snow space it loses the impact. I think there's some good ideas here, but they're not fully fleshed out yet, and it's probably going to be several years and unfortunately several games until they are.
Absolutely. I mean, it ultimately comes down to how much money it makes and what the general reception is. And usually, I remember being very disappointed in like Sun and Moon and X and Y and stuff, being like, oh, this is really cheap and shit. And everybody was like, oh, this is amazing, it's so good. Whereas now it seems like finally the perception is turning towards like, oh, these games aren't as good as they used to be, There is still the hardcore defenders, but there is like the review scores are dropping. The memes online of like, it's like Cyberpunk, the memes online of like all the glitches, more masking the actual poor design of the game. But like,
I will say that, yeah,
it's like it's still making money. But hopefully, eventually, it will start not making money, and it will start if they keep going on this path, and it will just force them to have to rethink things.
But, I think I said like, oh, they don't release broken games and stuff, but then again, from what I've read about Scarlet and Violet, I think a lot of that is actually, a lot of the low scores is about performance issues and glitches and all the rest of it. So maybe even that's slipping. On the one hand, I want to say I don't envy them because they have to shit out these games once a year. But on the other, as you said, they are the highest grossing media franchise in the world. So maybe I'm being too kind.
I mean,
we'll find out this year, won't we, when the next game comes out?
Yeah, we'll find out in 5 months, yeah. I mean, look, I'm sure the actual makers of the developers themselves are like talented individuals. And it's actually the managers and fucking boots of Game Freak or Pokemon Company who are the bastards in this. But even at that point, if you're getting if you're really struggling, I know it's not as simple as just hire more people, but supposedly the teams are quite tight knit. Surely you can you're the biggest grossing franchise in the world. Surely you can just employ a couple more people or something. Or I don't know. You've got all this money. There must be something you can do with that money. I don't know. Maybe I am literally just being too optimistic in that they don't give two fucks. But yeah, like you say, we'll see in 3 months' time for Black and White remake. So let's move on to a game and actually have Otis have something to talk about here.
Let's put the fucking kids to bed and let's bring out the fucking adult game, shall we? Because everyone's had their milk, everyone's ready. Okay, let's talk about Ultra Kill.
Oh yes.
Gonna spoil it now. Is the game of the year when it comes out of early access, which doesn't even look like that's going to be this year.
Is it actually really? Fuck.
I mean, it's one guy making it, 1.5 guys making it. So yeah, I mean, you can sum it up. I hate to do comparisons, but like if you type in your URL web browser bar quakemaycry.com, that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah.
It is a fast-paced.
Would you say there's a bit of Doom in there as well?
It depends. It's like 2016 Doom. Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah. It
Not
felt,
like old Doom.
To me, it felt like a sort of 2016 Doom with all the interesting combos and weapon uses for defeating enemies that you'd get in like a Devil May Cry or a character action game, and it merges very nicely.
Yeah, so the thing that like sets it apart from Doom 2016 in my mind is the interaction between all of your weapons, in that you can use the secondary of the shotgun to launch a shell into the air, and then you switch to the revolver secondary. You flip a coin with the revolver, you shoot the coin with the revolver, and it explodes into the shell. You're like, oh, that's cool. That's like 2 things I've just done. But wait, you can do that, then switch to your railgun, shoot the coin, and then the coin will ricochet into the shell and do an even bigger explosion. And there's just infinite amounts of combos that you can do with that. And the thing like sets that apart from, say, Devil May Cry, where you're just doing like style for style's sake for the most part, is that there's actually a lot of different real functionality and utility to the different things that you're doing. Like certain enemies resist explosions more, so you can't use that trick. So you can maybe like grapple onto them and then do like some punch combo or something like that. So like it's genuinely like I think it's like a close to flawless game in my mind. And another thing that I really like is like, again, in Devil May Cry, when you're going for S ranks. And in fact, I believe the developer said this himself. He said like he's obviously very much inspired by Devil May Cry. And he said like the biggest enjoyment he got from DMC was when he was trying to get S ranks on the hardest difficulty and stuff like that. And he wanted to encourage people to do that in this game by actually putting super boss, like hidden content behind getting perfect ranks. And it makes it way more enjoyable when you actually have a reward at the end other than, a plasterboard of P's on your rankings. And in addition to that, it's also way easier to get high ranks because, unlike Devil May Cry, you can actually get hit, and getting hit and healing off of it is a major mechanic. So it really is like a super aggressive game. It's super fast, super varied, super fun. Very, very, very good game. Recommend it to everyone who can aim.
I mean, to be fair, even because I'm shit at character action games and I'm shit at shooters, but yeah, I found it really fun. It's very dense, but not overwhelming. Everything is well structured and well paced throughout the levels. And I was very impressed by both the enemy variety and the level design that encouraged these different playstyles. And I mean, let's just say that when you said, oh, by the way, you can parry the shotgun blast that you're shooting to do a rocket. And it's like...
You punch your bullets to make them go faster.
Yeah, exactly. It's so fucking cool.
Yeah.
But even then, it goes... You think that's it, but it's like, no. There's like 5 different variations of each gun. There's a rocket parry, which can shoot things, and then there's like boosts and like text that you can do. And then there's this like weird, creepy... Dante's Inferno style like story with some weird like secrets.
I didn't even mention the story. The story is actually a classic character action in that it's entirely driven by the character who Jazz didn't beat, but like it's entirely like a plot built around developing the main villain, and you're just a robot in hell who happens to be inspiring change in another character, which is very weird and very Devil May Cry-ish in that Devil May Cry is about Virgil, it's not about Dante.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
And
no one cares about that.
But it's good that, I mean, I want to go back and play it. I want to just keep, and there's a lot of content in there, even for an early access, so...
it's definitely worth it, even...
It's wonderful.
It's 2/3 done, and hopefully the other third will be done. Well, I hope he takes his time, but yeah, great game.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's move on to a game which isn't so good. It's a game that I think only just me played. And that is Shovel Knight Dig. And I was horrendously disappointed in this, as I absolutely adored Shovel Knight when it came out. It's this indie darling, this Kickstarter success of just like a back to form 2D platformer. And
yeah, it's amazing. Shovel Knight.
Shovel Knight is amazing. Everybody loves
game.
it. And this is sort of like there was obviously the Pocket Dungeon and the Rivals or something, just like sort of spin-off games, but this was sort of touted as the next game that would be more of a mainline game. And I do respect the fact that it is trying to do something, instead of just doing, it's Shovel Knight, but in 16-bit,
Or just another expansion.
Yeah, it's not that. And I mean, the expansions are great for Shovel Knight. I mean, they are fantastic and they are free. But this one it tries to make it more like a roguelike, where you're constantly going downwards and you're digging and you're collecting treasure to then unlock stuff. But there's barely any like meta progression. Like there's very, very minimal meta progression. It's more about the actual randomness of each level. And I was a bit shocked that there isn't like more, that you start off with like 4 health, and there isn't like a where you can passively upgrade certain things so you can get through the level more. It just is like, you can unlock where you skip to a certain part in the level. And it's, I don't know, it feels like there just isn't much to it. It's very much basic, and while it keeps the Shovel Knight platforming and downward thrusting and mechanics, they almost seem to work against it when you're trying to constantly go down, and then whenever you're jumping, you automatically do the downward shovel spike, and it doesn't quite work with the way that you want to progress, and it sort of annoys you because you accidentally hit some traps and stuff. I don't know. I feel like I just feel disappointed by it. There's just not much to it, and it's nothing too interesting. There's nothing. There's even 2 bosses in it, which aren't new bosses. They're just like remixes of the old bosses, which I was like, are you sure? Like, I mean, obviously they release so much content for free, so they sort of get that pass, but I was very saddened by just how I was pretty bored by the game within like an hour or so. And yeah, I was sort of, just a bit gutted really. I was that was the one that I was like, okay, these guys are going to be great. But yeah, I guess, they can't all be hits. But
would you say it's the most disappointed game of the year for you, Jazz?
Yeah, because you can't be disappointed by Pokemon, can you? I 100%.
No.
Fair.
I was going to say, would you say you didn't dig this game?
You know what? This is why I invite you to these things. Mate? Like this is.
Yeah. I'll be back next year. See you, lads.
Well,
it's called leave conversation.
Listen, that's fair. I mean, to be fair, I was extremely disappointed by this, but why don't we go on to a game that has been disappointing people for the last 20 years, and the Sonic franchise. Tom, I heard you played the new Sonic Frontiers.
Well, I did. I played the new Sonic Frontiers for the new Nintendo Switch. So this game's also on PS5, PC and Xbox Series, but I played the Switch version. So I did not expect this to be very good. Nobody on the planet thought this was going to be good. And the person who is speaking right now is a huge Sonic fan, including some of the 3D ones. Some of them are terrible, some of them are okay, a couple of them are brilliant. And this one is good.
Sonic Frontiers is a weird game in many ways. One of the reasons why it's weird is that it's genuinely, unironically, fairly well received. The reviews have been quite good. And there's a lot of elements to it, but basically I think everyone knows that this is a Breath of the Wild rip-off to an extent. It just looked like they plonked Sonic's model into the Breath of the Wild map.
Am I right in... I know it's like, I'm not a Sonic lover quite openly. But am I right in saying that this isn't like a good game? This is just an alright game, but because of how bad the other games were previously, it's sort of like oh god, they've actually done something pretty okay here, and it's lauded more. Like if Sonic Boom and Sonic Forces and Sonic all that were like 8 out of 10 games, would this game be given the 7s, the 8s, the 9s that it did? Is that a fair assessment?
It might be a fair assessment from the gaming journos, but like, who cares about them? I mean, from my point of view, it's genuinely a good game. It could have been a lot better, but it could have been a hell of a lot worse. There's a few things it does really, really badly, which stop it from being a great game. But there's quite a lot of things that it does extremely well. So the first thing that it does really, really well is the controls. So a lot of people have taken issue with the way that 3D Sonic has controlled since the start. I think that those criticisms are only really valid for some of the games. But in terms of Frontiers, it's everything that you could ask for in terms of speed, momentum, but you also still feel in control. But amazingly, and this is the first time, as far as I'm aware, that this has ever happened. I've played all the 3D Sonic games, so I think this is the first time. You can actually customize your controls from the options menu, and that includes acceleration, turning speed, max speed. So you can. It already controls really well. You know, the default options, but you can also tweak it, and I did to get the the speed and the turning that is right for you. So it's one of the best controlling games in the series. I just call them shrines because that's basically what they are. I think they're called portals in the game. They're like Breath of the Wild's equivalent of shrines, except instead of a little puzzle room, it's a full 3D Sonic level. And when I say 3D Sonic level, I mean something akin to Sonic Generations or Sonic Colors. So yeah, those levels are excellent. I'd say on their own, they're worth the price of admission. But the problem is that you have to go through the open world to access them. Although once you finish the game, you can just select them and play them in any order you want. The game does do a pretty good job of exploration because basically the way it works is you collect something called character tokens to save whoever the character is on that map, which is Amy on the first one, then Knuckles and Tails. Then, so once you've got enough character tokens, you go to Amy, and then there'll be a story beat, and then you have to do it again. But eventually, you get to the point where nothing will happen, and then you just have to get the Chaos Emeralds. And you can get these in any order you want just by getting keys, and you get the keys from those stages. So there's freedom in terms of the order that you want to do things. But when I started playing the game, for the first couple of hours, I thought, why did they make this? It's just Sonic on a Breath of the Wild map. It's janky. It just feels pointless and stupid. But after about an hour in, I found myself not wanting to put the controller down. Like I would run around the map, and then you end up in these situations where like just the traversal of the map feels like a 3D Sonic level in itself. So you're just like reacting to obstacles and jumping and bouncing all over the place, collecting memory tokens. And then like I'd go to Amy, there'd be an interesting cutscene, and then I'd end up in this gameplay loop where I didn't want to stop playing because one thing just leads to the next. But it does get repetitive after a while. So there's 5 maps, and each of them involve collecting the character tokens, getting all the Chaos Emeralds, getting 6 of the Chaos Emeralds, and then at the end you fight this thing called a Titan, where you have to get to the top of it. Like the Titan will have the Chaos Emerald on him, so you get to like the top of him, like Shadow of the Colossus. Then you turn super, and then you can fight the Titan, and that formula repeats itself. The 4th map is different, so it repeats itself 4 times. So before the end of the game, it really does run its course. Like I remember towards the end of the 3rd map, I was like, yeah, I'm basically done with this now. Like I don't really need to go through this again. And then there's 2 more maps after that. The 4th one's quick, but the 5th one is the same thing again. There are some things that can't be defended though. The pop-in is horrendous. It's like PS1 standard pop-in. So the game looks pretty good in general gameplay, and during the cutscenes it looks good. But anytime you get close into any textures, it looks awful. There's things where like something that will happen consistently is that you'll run into a pile of rocks, and instead of there being an animation where it like topples over, they'll just disappear. Like they'll just imagine cut like delete, like highlighting it, delete. They'll just disappear. So there's, and then like other times you'll be running along the map and just like platforms and stuff parallel to you will just pop in one by one. So it's half a really good game and half a
abysmal
bit of a
mess.
Yeah, half abysmal mess, half really good. But the levels are excellent.
Is that glitch stuff unique to the Switch version, or is it more stable?
Apparently the Xbox Series version is like absolutely horrible, because that version in particular is getting like 3 out of 10. I think the Xbox Series version is just an unplayable mess. The PS5 version might be better than the Switch version, but I'm not sure.
I have seen some footage of someone playing on PC, I believe, and the pop-in was just as Tom described there. Kind of funny. The way the footage I watched, the guy described it, and Tom, I don't know if you can, if you agree or not. He said that he found that at parts during the game, like the gameplay to him devolved into him running towards something which was like floating in the air, or something which seemed out of place, just so that when he got closer, then other things would pop in around it, and then he'd sort of realise what was going on. And there's some footage that I show that as well. I don't think it's like everywhere, but there are some sort of egregious bits, if that's fair to say, Tom.
Yeah, but pretty much the pop-in, as I said, the pop-in is PS1 standard.
Well, there was a lot of like a controversy around like how it was being launched. That they were just like, oh, we probably need to delay it, and they're like, no, we're not fucking delaying it. In fact, we're bringing it forward. You know.
Right.
And everybody was sort of like, oh no, this is going to be really bad. Just like, and the trailers were laughed at quite heavily. And I mean, I've seen some of the footage, and the footage itself, like, I don't know if it plays differently, but it doesn't look great, I'll be honest, when you see it play.
Yeah, it looks awful. It looks awful.
It looks like one of those fan games sort of thing, like you say. But I mean, the actual idea of dropping Sonic into a large map isn't a bad idea, because I've always found whenever I've played a Sonic game, it's always too quick in a 3D environment, and you're turning around corners and you're just like, you can't really comprehend what's going on. And so a big open area to build up speed and jump around isn't a bad idea. But if it's got no pop-in, it's sort of like, well, I'd speed up and then I'd stop, and I'd speed up and stop, which sort of defeats the purpose. So
the control gameplay and the exploration is excellent. So like the standard gameplay loop is really, really good in terms of just like the main game, but the presentation's horrible, and it just gets way too repetitive, because the same structure repeats itself in each map. Like each map is different, but it's not different enough. So. And then there's just loads of balancing issues. So you probably are aware of this, or you might not be. Do you know that there's a skill tree in this game?
Yeah, I've heard that you could just like immediately fish or something, and then you can power up everything within a fucking 10 minutes or something.
Well, that was one of the things I was going to say. Yeah. So first of all, the skill tree is the smallest skill tree I've ever seen in any game. So it's a bit overhyped, the skill tree. There's not much to say about it. There's only a few moves to unlock. And then there's the Big the Cat levels, which aren't actually levels. They're just like shrines that you can go into and you can just fish. But when you fish in the Big the Cat levels, you get tokens, which you can then spend on upgrades. And you can just fish for like 20 minutes and just make yourself ridiculously overpowered and just skip huge chunks of the game, because you can actually buy memory tokens there as well. So if you can't be bothered to find them in the map, and they're everywhere in the map, but sometimes you have to find quite a lot to move on to the next character, to move on to the next event, you can just buy them at Big's fishing pond. And the same also goes for the keys and the gears that are needed to unlock the levels. So if you want, you can basically break the game by using the Big the Cat fishing levels. Another thing that I would say though is that the cutscenes are very good, and the voice acting is actually quite good. So in terms of the acting and the writing, it's by far the best game in the series.
Is it still like Sonic trying to save a woman and then have sex with her or something?
He's trying to save a female character, but he doesn't try and have sex with her.
Well, that's a step up.
So we're baby steps, you know. But I think actually Sonic 06 is probably the only game which isn't referenced. There's an unbelievable amount of There's an unbelievable amount of referencing to previous games, which, if you're not a big fan of the series, a lot of them will just go over your head. But there's references to like Sonic Riders and Sonic Lost World, both adventure games, multiple times. It's just every game in the series you can think of is referenced, but not Sonic 06. They even talk about like Unleashed, stuff like that. There's a nice bit where Sonic and Knuckles are talking to each other outside this like sort of big like it's like a shrine, like this big thing that they're looking at, and they're like reminiscing over past times, and then like actual footage from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, like all pixelated and stuff, like overlays on top of the screen as they're talking. Jesus. So like to show like the first time they met and stuff.
I mean, you haven't sold it to me, I'll be honest. I'll just say it, but it's I mean, at least it's a step in the right direction. But the problem is as we know, Sega will just drop it. They'll just any like whiff of it, they'll just completely change it up and do something. They'll do a fucking, I don't know, battle royale next or something. So
I think they're going to carry on in this way though, because it's sold well and it's reviewed well. So I think they will carry on with this, because there's a bunch of DLC chapters that are going to be released soon, because you can only play as Sonic in this. I think they're going to release some DLC where you can actually play as Tails and Knuckles, so I probably won't bother getting those. I think it's a good game, but it's not brilliant. There's better 2D Sonic games, and there's also a couple of better 3D ones as well. Both the adventure games are better, Colors is better, Generations is miles better. So, but overall, it's a pretty good game.
Well, I mean, that's Sonic fans are eating. Fair enough. So moving on to something that likes fish. I don't
Moving on to other furry,
other furries,
creatures.
Yeah.
That's we'll go with other furry creatures. Sonic furry, I guess so, but he's got like needles. Anyway, moving on.
Oh, he's
definitely a furry.
Definitely. All right, you three are the experts. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know what you do in your spare time. That's fair. Right. Yeah, I played the cat game. Yeah, it's called Stray. You've seen the Twitter clips. You've seen the footage. You play as a cat, and you walk around as a cat, and you do cat things. It's called Stray. I had a good time with it. Things the game does really well. I like the setting. It's in like a post-apocalyptic world. There's no other humans in the game. They're all gone by this point. It's kind of in like an underground city which was built because an apocalyptic event has happened. They keep it all, it's there's mystery to it. They don't explain everything, but you learn through hints through the world and through the world building and through the way some of the NPCs talk. So I like the setting. I loved the amount of effort and the amount of work that they put in to the cat. Now, it might seem silly, but the cat moves extremely cat-like. I don't know how else to say it. It just feels extremely natural when you move around with the cat. There's a dedicated meow button, which you can press at any time to meow. Like that sort of stuff I always love in video games. I guess you could argue it's completely pointless, but it's not. Like, you're playing as a cat, you should be able to meow when you want, and
it's
you
like
can.
Luigi's Mansion when you have the button to call out for Mario.
I was thinking the same thing.
It's perfect. It adds to it. So.
It adds so much, and I'd find myself just hitting the button at moments where, even if I was doing it sort of subconsciously, I felt like I hit the button at moments where I thought it was appropriate. Just little things like that. Just a great addition to the game. My issues with Stray is that there's just not much of a game to it. Every single thing that you do in this game is contextual. So you can't. So let's just give you a scenario. To jump, you walk up to the edge of a ledge, and then it comes up with the X button, and you press the X button, and then it jumps to the ledge for you. Plays a little animation where you jump to the ledge, and that goes for every single thing every action you do in the game. Like if you press X on your own when you're walking around as a cat, you don't jump. It's not like a jump button. You walk to the edge of a ledge, and then it contextually you pick the ledge you want by facing it, and then pressing X, and an animation plays. And because of that, it sort of doesn't feel much like a game. And I was kind of left wanting a bit more from it. I like the story. I like moving through. I like seeing the world. What I will say is the game looks amazing. That not only graphically in terms of the tech, but also the art style. There's at one part of the game you go into like a neon city with graffiti and neon lights everywhere, and it's raining and there's puddles on the floor, and the neon lights are reflecting off all the puddles and off all the walls. And of course, if you remember, you're playing as a cat in this game, so the camera's all the way down at like ground level. You're at cat level, and you're often bumping into things and walking up to stuff. So all the textures have to be like, they can't cut corners. All the textures have to be like detailed and ready and to look good, because you're always putting your face into stuff, and the camera's low. I don't know if that makes sense, but like,
No, sure.
I found
it does.
I found it very impressive. Like sometimes just walking through this world and just seeing all the bits going on, and like, even though it's post-apocalyptic, like I said, there's like a bunch of like robot inhabitants, and they're like doing stuff around the world. At some points, you can you like knock over a plant pot. If you knock over like a plant pot, actually no, sorry, I think it's a can of paint on a ledge, and because you're a cat, you can walk across the ledge and you can knock the can over. And if you do that, then it spills on the ground in front of like a robot shop. And then next time you go to that area, a robot will come out and he's now cleaning the paint, and then he like chases you a bit because it's the cat, and other things react and stuff. And so it's polished. I think that's the word. It's really well polished. And for that reason alone, and because it's a short game, I had a good time with it. My problems with it is that, like I said, there's just not much of a game to it. It ends quite abruptly. There's a couple of sections where you do some running. There's a couple of sections where you do some very light puzzling. Apart from that, you find a lot of yourself in this game is walking up to one ledge and pointing your face towards something that you think you can jump on, and then the button prompt doesn't come up. And it's like, oh, I guess I can't jump on that. What if I face this other ledge? Oh, the button prompt does come up. Okay, I'll press X, and then it plays the animation, it jumps that ledge. So, I mean, for that won't be for everyone, obviously. That might put off people immediately, and I can definitely see why. I sort of just wish there was more of a game to this. But for a low-ish, well, I think a low-budget indie title, looks amazing, controls great. I love the polish that they put on the cat and the way it feels to control the cat and be the cat. And for a short experience, I had fun with it.
Would you say that it feels like it's playing itself?
Yes. To an extent, yes. I mean, obviously, a lot of the game is just looking at stuff and then finding the right thing to look at and press X. And then, like I said, there you have some light puzzle elements. I think the game also does a good job in sometimes conveying that. It's not like confusing. Like the game does all the stuff that good game design does, where it will subtly. There's no like.
There's yellow paint everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, there's no like cat vision. You don't press a button and then you go into cat mode. But it does a subtle job of being like, oh, there's two air vents, but one of the air vents has a the spikes on top to stop like pigeons and stuff. So it's like, I obviously can't jump to that one. And they use color a lot. It's not just like, I know some games get this quite badly wrong and it's just like too obvious, but I think they use color quite cleverly to guide you through the levels. So it does do it well, but I think it just maybe plays itself is too harsh, but it's just not enough of a game here. What I will say, and the final thing I'll say on this, is that I think Stray, from what I can see online, has found an audience of people that don't really play games.
Yes.
People who might be cat lovers or animal lovers that don't play video games. And for that reason alone, I think this is kind of perfect. Like if I had to recommend a game to someone, I don't know, someone who absolutely never played games before, maybe an elderly person or something like that, a complete novice, something like Stray is perfect. It's easy to understand what you have to do. There's no difficulty. There's no decisions to be made. There's not much of a game.
There's no gameplay.
There's not much of a game. There's not much of a game, but it is a relaxed, enjoyable experience if you like cats and you like moving around as cats. And like I said, the game looks amazing and feels great. And for those two reasons alone, plus its length, I quite enjoyed it. It's not. I see people go crazy for this online. I'm seeing like rave reviews and high meta scores. If you want to put any weight into that or whatever,
It's among the top-rated games on Steam, I think.
That's mad.
it is
Absolutely
like,
mad.
It is. I'd never get that. I would never get that from playing it. But again, maybe people that there aren't many games like this. Really, maybe there's like that. This is the point. There's no market there. Or there is a market, should I say, but it's not being fulfilled. There's not many games like this where you can have relaxed experiences without anything being too challenging or, I guess from my point of view, engaging. But people can still have fun controlling a cat around. And for that reason, at least it's doing something different. It's a non-violent, non-combative video game. Those two things alone already set it apart from 90% of other things out there. If you're looking for a video game,
sort of.
Yeah, it is like, it's a lot like Journey. Think of like Journey for cats, and I love Journey. So yeah, it's kind of Journey but with the cats. I didn't really think of that. That's a great sort of summation of it. And
I think
Journey
they should make a sequel where the cat gets a gun
exactly.
and a jetpack.
I'm not sure. I can't remember the studio name. I can't remember the studio name.
Studio.
Yeah, they could have made a roguelike. They could have done it. They could have shit out a roguelike. Instead, they made a cat game where you don't fight enemies, and this. I'll make a bold statement here. I feel like games like this, in a way, in some way, don't kill me for this. In some way, help push the industry more than if they put out like another roguelike, because Stray is doing something different. It's trying to tap into an audience that might not already play games. It's trying to tap into an audience that might not play games like this. And for that reason alone, like I'll give it credit where it's due.
Matt, I think you've completely lost your head there. No. It's. I mean, yeah. It's when I saw the E3 trailer for it, I was like, oh, this will be. I was thinking, oh, this is going to be sort of like a Limbo style game. Like you go on a journey through some apocalyptic, try and figure out what's happening. It's all weird.
Yeah, that's what I thought it'd be as well.
But then when there was like no puzzles in the gameplay, and I've heard that the story is. I know you said the story was alright, but like it's the cat is got a device on it that's intelligent. That made me go, oh, okay. I mean, what's the point of it being a cat apart from it's just a cat? It's. I mean, that sort of like went, oh, okay, well, I don't really care too much about it. But then, as you say, there are people who don't play games, who I remember going out to the pub with, and they're just like, Jazz, you're a game person. I've been playing this game called Stray. I've heard it's really good. And, like, you should play it. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I've not played it. I'm not that interested in it. But, yeah, I mean, obviously, grandmas need their games. But, like, and it's nice to have... it clearly struck a chord with people. It clearly struck a chord.
Yeah.
It won the fucking award for Indie Game of the Year when actual games came out. So it clearly did something. But not enough for me. I think Journey is a boiled down better version of that. Limbo's a better version of what it's doing.
Limbo requires far more engagement than Stray does. I wouldn't put them. Limbo requires you to time jumps, for example.
Exactly.
Stray doesn't even ask you to do that. But I just feel like we need games like this. We need games like this, and it would be too reductive to say like, oh, they just shit out a thing for the casuals, because there's too much love in here, too much polish. It looks great, it feels great, as I've already said, for me to be reductive about it. Now, if you're listening to this and you think like, oh, I love games like Doom Eternal and Hades and Elden Ring, and none of this appeals to me, that's fine. But it's also good to have games which don't appeal to those players. And if they're made with as much polish as these ones are, than Stray is, I should say, then fair play.
Yeah, I mean, I'm much more happy that this got made rather than like another Call of Duty or another Assassin's Creed or whatever. But
they could have made a game where you shoot zombies, bro. But they made some cat game. It's some weird. You play as a cat and you can meow, and they put a shitload of time into making sure that the cat stretches correctly and animates, and you can knock stuff off ledges like cats do. Like, I don't know.
I'm sure they could have just done a little bit more of it though. Like just from what I've seen, just maybe in terms of the puzzling, just a tiny few bit more. Like knock a can off, and then that does a thing when But I don't know. Fair enough. Although we have spoken a lot about a game, you've probably spoken more about the actual game length.
then it
that's
would take apologies.
Speaking of roguelikes ruining the industry, let's talk about a couple of roguelikes.
Yeah.
There's one that us three played together, in fact, which is an odd sentence to say for a roguelike. So let me just quickly, 10 seconds, mention a couple of others. Luck Be a Landlord. I mentioned last year that I played Shipbreaker, whatever it's called. And that was the only left-wing game I've ever played. This is the second left-wing game I've ever played. You guillotine a landlord at the end. So that's always fun. It's also just like a nice idea of just like a slot machine roguelike where you can rack up like billions and billions of numbers. And that's always a lot of fun. Oh no, there is another one that me and Jazz play, so I can't mention that. So I guess that's actually it. I just wanted to shout out Luck Be a Landlord. Okay. So let's talk about Across the Obelisk. Shall we?
Yep, so this is a 4-player co-op roguelike.
It's 4-player Slay the Spire.
It is 4-player Slay the Spire. It is. I think...
That's it.
When you say it like that, I think that's it. I mean, what I will say is I had fun with it. I had fun playing it with you guys. The 4-player element just makes it unbelievably chaotic. If you've ever played Slay the Spire, obviously there's already a lot going on in your brain when it comes to building your deck and the enemies you face and weaknesses and strengths. It's already like quite a big mental stack as you work through the rogue like map in Slay the Spire. Now times that by 4 in Across the Obelisk, and not only are you building your own deck, but you're trying to synergize it with 3 other friends, and then the enemies are basically all tripled up to compensate for the extra players.
The fucked up thing is like I could not imagine playing this single player because you do have to control all 4 of them. As a result of it, I haven't played it much because like it's fucking a nightmare to get people together to play this.
Yeah, I mean, Across the Obelisk is like it's exactly that. It's unapologetically like deep in its like it obviously loves Slay the Spire, but it's very much like we've got 8 different status effects for everything, and then all these things combo into each other. It's really hardcore, but weirdly, I mean, it's much easier if you play it with 3 other people, because then you can compartmentalize the only thing you need to do, and you understand your character and what your things do. And so you sort of work together, and that makes it easier to do. I have played it single player, and it is a lot. You have to do a lot of reading, a lot of like research.
It must like literally be like playing all of the characters in Slay the Spire at once.
It is basically
they're all completely different, and there's like 4 different versions of each class, right? Or 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, fuck that.
So I mean, I'm not going to say that it's not fun. Like I did enjoy myself playing it. It definitely scratched the itch. But I do find that like when things are much funner when you have people around, and so obviously playing on your own, and it sort of when you play the game on your own, it does highlight the problems with the game, which would be like the length is quite. A single run is like 2 or so hours potentially.
It is pretty long. I don't think I even finished like the 2nd level.
Yeah. And there isn't even though you can branch the paths, I didn't feel there was much variance in what happens.
Yeah, all it felt like was that in this area they're resistant to this element. Yeah, that's the only difference.
Which sort of like made me like when you start the game go and it's only when you sort of beat the first boss you're like, oh, okay, fine, I'm into the game again. You get back into like that sort of swing. And when you play with other people, you're unlocking shit, and you're having banter and stuff, and you can sort of like put the thing down for a second and walk away while someone else takes their turn, and so it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like it requires too much energy for you for so little output. So it's much better to play co-op, but it's not a game that I could just like I could pick up Slay the Spire right now and play it again because I love Slay the Spire. But I don't think I'll be doing that Across the Obelisk come the next 3 months. Yeah,
it's good that things are finally sort of ripping off Slay the Spire directly. I think more games should do that.
Yeah, me too.
Anyway, but there's one other major roguelike, and the reason I spoke about Luck Be a Landlord is because that game was very good at like having satisfying game feel, I suppose you could say. But there's another roguelike which sort of set the trend this year, which is Vampire Survivors.
Ooh.
Ooh. It is the best walking simulator of all time, I think it's fair to say. The only buttons are to walk around. You pick up chests, you kill enemies, you get items from the chests. You slowly get insanely fucking powerful. The screen is full of enemies, it's full of projectiles, and then you hit that fucking sweet quintuple chest, and the mobile game bullshit animations start playing, and you're like, this is it. This is the dopamine rush I've been wanting.
It's so good. It's £2 or something, and it's so good. You do nothing.
It's £2 goes so far for this game. No £2 I've ever spent on Steam has gone this hard.
I think I've in fact I'm going to look up how many hours I've played. But I've done all the achievements. I've done everything, and even then there's so many like secrets in it. Like there's a certain character which you have to unlock the previous character, play that character to the point where you can beat a certain enemy, and then hopefully there's a chance that maybe the Mortal Kombat toasty will come up, and at that point you have to press down and right to then unlock that character. And it's like, you know, the levels of nonsense in it, but it's because it's so simple. It's a podcast game. I don't know. It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
I think the reason it's like really notable is because it takes the aspects of like the addictive aspects of mobile games, but it doesn't make you buy anything past the game itself. Like there is one DLC now, but that's like a full-fledged expansion to the game, which also just costs like £1.
And it obviously deserves that money.
Yeah. So I just think it's really cool that people, like at least someone saw value in like what mobile games are doing, roping kids in with flashy animations and like actually applying it to a worthwhile game. As simple as it is, it's still very, very fun.
It's very fun. It costs I'd say less than I'd probably pay for it. It's very funny in terms of like the descriptions. It does everything right, and it's also the perfect casual game. I've just looked at. I've got 51 hours on record, and that's £2.49 it costs, which is that's fucking ridiculous.
Bang for buck.
And it's just really fun, and it's like I get that itch to just sort of put it on if I'm like, oh, I want to watch, listen to like a YouTube video or listen to a podcast or something. It's like bang, it's perfect. Put that shit on, you know. It's I mean, what a hit! What an absolute hit that's come out of nowhere.
It doesn't even matter that they stole like all of the art assets.
Yeah, I know.
But it's all fun. Don't compare the cover on Steam too closely to Bayonetta 2. Yeah. Because there's no similarities that you can prove in court.
Yeah. Lots of the enemies are basically just one-for-one riffs from any Castlevania game. But like, don't worry.
There's one or two Castlevania references.
One or two. But the thing is, the issue that we've got to talk about here is there's no fucking vampires in the game.
You're not wrong. I didn't even realize that until you said it.
Because in the trailer for the DLC they said, we'll promise we'll add an actual vampire in this time.
That's good.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Fucking hell. Okay, well, forget everything I said. It's a fucking shit game.
I am shocked that this game would be so high up my rankings for this year. Like it
feels like a game that anyone could really just make.
Yeah,
but he did it really well considering like the clearly like low. I don't want to say low talent, but like low resources, I suppose.
But then I always think that it's like, oh, anyone can make this game. It's like, okay, why didn't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Just do it. Okay, it's such a simple, brilliant concept that just do it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like it does also raise the point of like there are things that the mobile industry has been doing for bad reasons, but if you can encapsulate some of those, you can really make something that isn't very interesting by pure game feel. Wonderful. Fair enough. I'm going to rattle off a couple of games I'll talk about for 5 seconds and then move on to a game that I think only I've played. But first, Cult of the Lamb came out. It was right. It's a roguelike, decent combat, sort of decent-ish base management. It's fine. It's totally fine. It does everything fine. It's like everything's to the level of a 7 out of 10, and that not like IGN 7 out of 10. Like everything's good. Everything is just good. The sound's good. The art's good. The gameplay's good. It feels fun to play, but I can't remember anything specifically from it that I went, oh, that was great. It's just good. I played Wolfstride, which I loved the look of it when it had a trailer and deal in a E3 as this sort of like black and white mech game, which is very inspired by Cowboy Bebop, but it's actually a story game as opposed to a mech fighting game, which really shocked me because there's no...
As soon as I looked at the trailer and saw the dialogue style, and I was immediately put off.
So this is one of the worst games I've played this year. This would have been my biggest disappointment, just because looking at the trailer, they really focused on a lot of the gameplay, but there's so few bits of like robot fighting gameplay compared to the amount of like you walk to a place talking some really cringy anime. Okay, I'll finish. While it does look nice, it's drawn in this black and white Cowboy Bebop style, and it has that jazz soundtrack. That really, I was like, oh, this could be really good. Let me just break that for you. In that there's a character you get within the first hour, which is a robot that is called Pea Poo, and it has this fun little quirk where every time it says something angry, it goes pee, like it's censoring itself, and it is unfucking bearable. It's so unbearable. I had to quit the game. I couldn't go any further. I've never had that before.
2022 is the year of Westerboo or Weeaboo cringe games. It seems
it was so bad. And I'll save some of the other ones for afterwards. But let's move on to Tunic. I'm sure some of you guys here are interested in playing this game. It's probably the most second favorite game of the year.
Yeah, thanks for buying it for me and then stealing my library to just play it yourself. And now I'm not going to play it until I have nothing else to do. So
couldn't help it.
GG.
It's a nearly perfect game. It's top isometric Zelda-y, very clear in its inspirations, with slight more updated combat. Not like Dark Souls. Everybody's saying it's like Dark Souls. It is. It's just because it has a dodge roll and it has the ability to fucking collect the soul. I don't know, the fucking.
It seems to be a recurring thing because like people said Death's Door was like Dark Souls, but it was just Zelda, and I'm assuming this is better than Death's Door.
Yes, it's much better. But
any game where the character can roll, people say it's like a Dark Souls.
That's it. Yeah. It's just updated combat from like imagine Link to the Past, but you've updated the combat.
I mean, Ocarina of Time is the fucking Dark Souls ripoff all along. You knew it from the beginning.
Exactly. But here's the thing: it's not the combat or anything that makes this game magical. It's the world itself and how it is. It's Dark Soulsianly obtuse. I know that, and I'm comparing it now to Dark Souls, and that makes me seem like a fraud. But you don't know anything about the world, and the only bits of information you get are in a like a pamphlet, which you would get in like an NES or an SNES game, with the style of art exactly looks like one of those booklets you would get and you'd read through when you're playing like Mega Man X or something. But all of it is in a different language that you have no idea, and it will never translate it for you. Just contextually through how it's written on the page, you pick up ideas, and it gives you one or two power. I think it gives you like one power up in the game. Everything else is how you can contextually use what you have in an Outer World style to recontextualize exactly how the map layout is. And there are so many secrets hidden in this game that it boggles my mind how brilliant it is. I felt like I'm actually exploring something interesting and weird and trying to figure out exactly what's happening. It is wonderful, and I don't really think I can say anything else about it, unfortunately, because it's It's just you need to play this game for yourself, and you just need to play the game. That's it. It's very, very fun.
Yeah, I was initially interested in it because like the only other Zelda, like if that's the term, that I've enjoyed is like Hyper Light Drifter, and I sort of got that wordless vibe from it.
It's definitely closer to like Hyper Light Drifter. I mean, Zelda obviously has this thing of like the structure of like you on the overworld, you do something, then you go into a dungeon, you go through some puzzles that are probably unique to that dungeon, you get an item which helps you progress further in the dungeon, you beat the boss with the item, or something on that effect.
That is the Zelda formula. That's the Link to the Past formula.
But like, this is not necessarily that, in that there are certainly dungeons, or areas that are considered dungeons, which you go to, but they are... you're still with the same mechanics that you have. You're just collecting more information that recontextualize it. So
Outer Wilds.
Yeah, exactly. So like all the abilities that you can use, you can do right from the fucking start, and you can go and do the final boss if you want to. But you collect information that gives you and then at the end you sort of recontextualize everything. Oh shit, I didn't know I could do this. Fuck, I'm gonna go back to these things because I now know I can do this thing.
Say no more.
But it goes even deeper than you think. It's like any tiny detail you think is like maybe like just for fluff. It's not fluff. It's a secret that they've meticulously crafted into this beautiful little game. I really can't sing its praises anymore. It's and it has that. Look, I can't just say anymore. Just play the game. It's fucking amazing.
Yeah, to say
I'm interested. Yeah, I'm interested to play it because it's nice to play a game that is just a rip-off of. Well, it's not just a rip-off, but it's like heavily inspired by the old 2D Zeldas. Because there aren't too many of those. Like Otis was saying, the Hyper Light Drifter. There's another one. It's I believe only on the Switch, and it's called Blossom Tales.
Yeah.
It's like a very blatant rip-off of A Link to the Past, which is so obscure that I got stuck about an hour and a half in, and I could not find a single walkthrough or playthrough. So
really? I mean, I've heard of Blossom Tales. I mean, that's it. It's like
I'd heard of it, but I couldn't find any information other than this is a game on Switch that's a bit like Zelda.
Yeah. I'm also surprised that there aren't more games inspired by classic Zeldas, because
it is really weird. Like you can count them on one hand, like Okami.
Yeah, and I mean, but even then, most of them are a bit more different. Really. Like Tunic, it's very clearly inspired by Zelda in that it's fucking Tunic. It's a fox in a fucking tunic that looks like Link in that sort of cutesy style. But I wouldn't put it anywhere near a Zelda game because it does its own thing. But that does. I am surprised that there aren't just like, oh, we're just gonna make a Zelda game. You know, just unabashedly make a Zelda game.
Like the blatant puzzle dungeons, as opposed to like combat dungeons and stuff like that.
I'm just surprised that they haven't done any of those. Like, but I mean, you know, and it's when you have something like this that comes out, you're like, oh, fucking yes, this is. It's really, you know, evoking not nostalgia for nostalgia's sake, but it's making me feel something I haven't felt for a while, which is that wonder, a genuine wonder and mystery in playing a game
that you haven't felt since last year when you played Echoes of the Eye.
Exactly. I mean, that literally, yeah. I mean, we are obviously spoiled for those two. I mean, Outer Wilds, Echoes of the Eye, and Tunic. Those three games have really like. I'm just gonna be sad that there's probably not gonna be anything that does that next year. You know, it's. I love it. Yeah, I love it.
Don't cry. It'll be fine.
I'll try not to cry. Right. Well, shall we move on to Tom? I think you've played a couple of other games. Do you want to talk about Mario Strikers?
Oh, do I have to?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So Mario Strikers Battle League. They fucked it up. They just fucked it up, guys. It's so disappointing. It's by far the biggest disappointment of the year. Mario Strikers Charged was the last one. which came out 15 years ago in 2007, which is a genuinely brilliant game. I know you'll agree, Jazz. And the original game on the GameCube was also a great game, albeit not many people rated it. I think a lot of that was to do with the fact that it came out so late in the GameCube's lifespan, because it was less than about 1 year before the Wii came out.
But Mario Strikers Battle League, it's somewhat in between those two games in terms of the gameplay style. It's closer to the original game, but basically, you can probably hear in my voice, I'm trying to muster enthusiasm for it, but it's just it feels like a dead game. That it's lacking energy. The way the characters move, it's just not fun to play. They made some horrible mistakes as well mechanically. I don't know what they were thinking with the item system in this one. So the item system in the first two Mario football games were there's no fouls, but if you tackle a player and he doesn't have the ball, you give them an item. So that's the trade-off. If they've got the ball, you can smash them as much as you want, but you can't just tackle someone off the ball. And if you do, you give them an item. The way it works in Battle League is when you do that, the crowd will throw an item box onto the pitch, and then you have to physically run over and touch the item box to get the item. But doing this will mean, generally speaking, that you have to run away from where the action is to grab the item. So then there's a bit of choice, decision making there in terms of, do I stay and try and take control of the ball, or do I, run away from it, try and grab this item, and then see if I can get my team back in shape to win the ball back? Now, that would be fine, but the problem is that in order for that scenario to even start, it's because the other team has just smashed you off the ball. So what this results in is basically a system where there's barely any punishment for just smacking people around. The other thing with that is that there's still luck involved even then, because you don't know where the item box is going to appear, and often the crowd will just throw it into an area where it's of no use to you. That's disregarding the other mechanic where there's special, I think they're coloured red item boxes, or they might be rainbow coloured, I can't remember, that get thrown onto the pitch randomly at a random area of the pitch that anyone can just pick up. So if you happen to be near it at the time, you get the item. So there's just an unnecessary element of luck involved. And then there's the other mechanic that they completely fucked up, which is the power strike mechanic. At least I think that's what it's called. Anyway, it's the strike where you can score multiple goals with one shot. So in the original game, if you got this, you could score 2. In the Wii one, you could score up to 6. In this one, it's 2 again. But the way this used to work is you'd get the ball to your captain and then hold down the shoot button. And if you hold it down for long enough, you get the chance to do this hyper strike. In Battle League, it works like a smash ball. So an orb of energy will randomly fall on the pitch, and then if you touch it, you get the opportunity to do a power strike when you get the chance. And I just don't know what they were thinking with any of these changes. It's all just worse. And then the way the characters feel, the way they pass, everything's worse. It's like halfway between an actual football sim and a Mario football game, and the balance is all wrong. The level design is bizarre. The characters are unbalanced. The speed, it's too slow in terms of running speed and shooting and passing. The shooting mechanic, I think, is a joke. I think they've gone for something that's supposed to be more technically difficult to pull off, where if you pull the analog stick back, you can aim for a specific corner of the goal, whether it be high or low, and also direction. But in reality, there's still a little bit of RNG involved, enough to make it just a frustrating mess. So they're still adding more characters to it now, but
I think
the single player.
The final update's out now, isn't it? So,
Well, yeah,
Has it just happened? Yeah.
I'll jump in with this. So obviously, I'll just make a quick note on this. The recent entries in all the Mario sports titles, basically the ones on the Switch, have all had this sort of cycle where they get released kind of underbaked, kind of missing content, kind of missing the things you'd expect, especially from their predecessors.
Like Tennis Aces was actually fucking sick.
Yes,
Pretty
there are
damn
some.
good.
There are
That
some
was
exceptions.
very early on.
but
there are some exceptions.
They did with that. They released content for free over the course of the year, though.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. But so they've done the same here with Strikers Battle League, released and then free updates over the course of the year, or at least it was planned that way. But apart from a couple new characters, they're done now. They've done the final free release or final any release, and I think from what I can see, and Tom, you can confirm, the game is still kind of lacking content and is undercooked.
It's shite. It's absolutely shit. They've
Put it that
completely
way,
fucked it up. The updates are just new characters, but the actual game itself, the game of football, is crap. Biggest disappointment of the year. I never thought I would see a third Mario Strikers game because it's been 15 years.
Yeah.
And now it's out. I wish they hadn't done it. The single player content is like almost none as well. It's just like 5 tournaments where you win 3 games to win the tournament. And that's it. Rubbish.
Well, I mean, to be fair, exactly. It's been 15 years, and when it got announced, it was like, oh shit, this is great. I loved Charge. And when I watched the trailer, I was a bit like, oh, it's a bit basic. I get that. It's been a while, so they don't want to do anything too complex. But it was just like, oh, it's just you're just playing the football, as opposed to at least Charge tried to do stuff new, and I was a bit surprised at how there wasn't any weird modes, there wasn't any strange arenas that did certain things.
No, all the pitches are the same.
Yeah, and I was very underwhelmed by that. I mean, fine if you're making if you take a fighting game, for example, and you strip it down and make it just properly good for competitive, you can sort of understand that. But with this, it felt underbaked at the start, and they've only added in characters, and it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. And I mean, I'm just going to take this on to, I think it's Next Level Games that make it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to call them out because I think Luigi's Mansion 3 was fucking shit. And then they
Luigi's
made this
3
game,
was awful.
and it's fucking shit. And it's like, dear. They've recently been bought out by Nintendo, and they've dropped 2 stinkers that everybody else seems to think are great. But they're real. I am a bit disappointed by
I don't think people particularly like Mario Strikers. Luigi's Mansion 3 got a lot of praise. And I think a lot of that was down to I think a lot of that was down to the presentation and that it was very playable, but I think it's an awful, horribly designed game. I completely agree. And Strikers, the thing about Strikers, literally the only other thing I've got to say about it is that it is a very original game. It's not like the first 2. The tackling mechanics, shooting mechanics, and passing mechanics are all different, and you do have to learn it. It's one of the least accessible Mario sports games there's ever been. There's a genuine learning curve to it. But I've put in the hours in that game, and I've come to the conclusion that it's just really bad. I can't make excuses for it. It's just not a good game.
So
honestly, there's a worrying trend here. Maybe with Mario Tennis Aces being an exception, but there's a worrying trend here of some of these sports titles, which admittedly are just Mario sports titles, coming out quite underbaked, quite seemingly unfinished, with a promise of free DLC down the line to kind of sweeten the deal. When these sort of things, like Toadstool Tour on the GameCube, I think I might have mentioned this before, and Power Tennis, back in the day on the GameCube, were kind of, even if they weren't blockbuster smash hits game of the year, they were fully fledged, well polished content experiences. And now
they were great. They were great games as well. Mario Power Tennis is a great game.
No, that's what I'm saying.
It's a really good game. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying. And these were fully fledged great games. Now it seems like maybe with Mario Tennis Aces aside, a lot of these new Mario entries in the Mario sports franchise seem a bit underbaked, undercut. Oh, we'll kind of add finish it later with free DLC.
It
appears to be the case because I heard the golf game was really bad as well. I haven't played it. The golf game on the
I've heard
Switch,
similar. I know
golf.
I know they did a similar cycle where they released it and then free DLC later. I'm assuming because again it was missing features that should have been in there from day one.
Yeah.
But just like Strikers Battle League, they promised later on. It's kind of disappointing.
And I mean, I don't expect them to like completely innovate every single time, but it just feels like, I mean, like, obviously making a good game's fine, but tennis power races or whatever. Was it the Star Rush Golf or something? Where you have to it's like speed golf. That was the thing, and then Strikers. They all seem like they've not really done anything interesting, and they've just stripped it down and done a decent enough passable version of the game on the Switch so that it sells, as opposed to, and then we'll drip feed the content over the time so that it comes up to a reasonable amount. And that feels a bit like, you may as well just release the previous games if you're not going to try and do something interesting. I feel like with those franchises you can do fucking anything. It's fucking Mario. If you do golf, you can do interesting things with golf that I'm surprised they haven't done yet. Or Strikers game. I'm surprised they haven't, tried to do weird, wacky things that they've done with like Mario Party. They've done with Mario Kart. They've done with like, I don't know, just a lack of ambition.
Well, yeah. I mean, Charged was Mario Strikers Charged was an amazing example of that. I mean, that game is packed. There's so much depth to the skill system and the different pitches, but they could have built on it. And they went the other way, which is fine if they executed it correctly, but they didn't.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, is what it is. But yeah, hey ho. Let's move on.
Bring back Sega Soccer Slam.
Sega Soccer Slam
thinking.
is an absolute treat, and
you say it's 15 years since Mario Charge. It's been 20 years since Sega Soccer Slam. Now that's a fucking travesty.
Sega. Well, without Sega Soccer Slam.
Yeah, go on.
So I was just going to say, without Sega Soccer Slam, we wouldn't have the Mario Strikers games because Mario Smash Football or Super Mario Strikers on GameCube is just Sega Soccer Slam.
100%.
But improved version of it.
Yeah. You're the real one.
It's even got the fireworks celebrations at the end of the games. It's literally just the same thing.
Of course. Let's move on to a game that we actually like, though. And I think
I have an introduction to this, if you don't mind. So, do you remember we were watching the Annapurna live stream one day several years ago, because Mobius had hinted at Outer Wild shit, and this game was in that. A game called Neon White was shown in that, and I said, wow, that game looks cool, and you said it looks like cringy anime shit, and we were both completely right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Have any of you played Donut County?
I like
developers. So I like Donut County as well. I think it was a charming little game that had it was a little sweet game with a weird mechanic about eating things in a hole that had decent enough writing, but it was writing of a very clearly someone who loved Adventure Time, liked those sort of tween, like, he watched animes, like lots of those like internet memes and stuff written into the dialogue. And so
there wasn't much gameplay, but there was like a sense of fun about it that you get from like cartoons.
It was a short little game, and you could sort of be like, it's kind of cute, it's forgivable, it's a nice little indie short game that was made, it's quite interesting and unique. And then you go on to this, and this game is, and I think we'll all agree, like mechanically, it's fucking superb. It's an absolute mastercraft of level design, gameplay, and replayability, but then has maybe some of the worst dialogue, worst storytelling in a game. You may disagree slightly with me, Otis, because you've said certain things that I haven't even got to.
What I've said is like it's trying to be that cringe anime thing, and it succeeds in doing what it sets out to do. But the question is, why the fuck would you want to do that? Like, the aesthetic is fine, and like the story feeds into that aesthetic, but like, you're not playing this if you like, even no matter how shit a game is, I'll rarely skip dialogue, but I often skip dialogue in this game. So just take that how you will. But gameplay wise, yes, we are. I think we're all fans of it.
It feels very weird because I mean, obviously, you know, most everyone says that loves this game. It's just it's a speed running game basically, with the greatest mechanic ever, which is introducing a leaderboard of all your friends' results. Fucking the DAC time, as we called it. We do need to talk about that because us putting into a small friendly competition, because after every level it shows your scores and compares it to everyone on your Steam friends list scores on that level. So of course Matt was the first to play it, and I made a point of beating all of his scores when I first played it. I ended up overtaking him. Jazz started playing it. He tried to beat Matt as well. And then Matt ended up overtaking me in later ones. And then the cycle continues. And that, if you think about it, that is that's the epitome of video games right there. But that's how fucking arcades started.
But that is but you know what though? You know what? Yeah. You three, you can enjoy this while it lasts. But you wait until 2026 when I have a good enough PC that can run Neon White.
Neon White can
all
run
your scores get stomped.
Neon White, you can play Neon White on anything. It does not take a lot. But anyway,
I'm going to try and run it after this podcast.
The whole point of the game is it's speed running to completely and utterly, you know, down to its microcosm. It's boiled down to its purest components, and adding in that leaderboard gives you the experience of like if you were a speedrunner who is desperate to try and cut it down to those microseconds. Like you feel like you're gonna be in a summoning sort video. Like I'm gonna finally beat, you know, Matt and get his time. And like I remember when I beat some of your scores, you were like, "Fuck that, no!" And you came back on and you tried to beat
immediately booed it up.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, it just shows that like, that's just such the driving force behind it, which also is backed up with very great mechanics that are interesting and quite unique in the game. Like I've not seen a game do something like that.
Like trade off the gun for movement options.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I
think the most commendable thing for me is like when you have a game that's specifically about speedrunning, it can feel like if you take like Meat Boy or Dust Force or anything like that, where it's like, okay, it's all about getting the time right. With those games, I feel like there's an easy pitfall for developers to fall into, where it's like there is one solution to this game, to this level. Do this, and you'll get the fastest time. Maybe you can like save frames if you do it like absolutely frame perfect. But with this game, even though it does, once you get a certain rank on a level, it tells you this is a shortcut. If you use this, you can probably get the platinum, the pure platinum, whatever it's called. Even though it does that, and when I saw that, I was like, oh shit, that's sort of disappointing. What it doesn't tell you is that the shortcuts aren't actually the optimal way. There's still ways for you to optimize levels beyond just what the shortcut does. And in fact, the game does tell you this if you get a fucking insano score on a level, you get a red diamond medal. And that means you beat the developer's actual time on that level. And like the fact that it doesn't give you any fanfare beyond you have a red medal on that level really does just like push it over the edge of like, oh shit, there's so much that you can do with this game and I'm barely scratching the surface.
Yeah. And I mean, even if you look at some of the YouTube videos as well, like I remember like I was like, oh, I need to shave like half a second off. Is this something I'm not doing optimally? I go to Google a YouTube video and it's just like it's a complete different thing. It's like I'm watching a different, game. It's like I would be taking 25 seconds to jump up this thing. They just be like bang, 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 bang. Oh, they're there in 2 seconds by doing a very weird like wall bouncing thing. It's incredible.
It's very like
depth.
not glitchy as well. I know a lot of people complain about speedruns just relying on glitches, unskilled, and all that shit. But this, like, it has very few that I'm aware of, if not none, that help you. Aside from like maybe some walking on some polygons, in some levels.
Sure. I mean,
So it's very pure in that sense.
It is, and it's just addictively fun. But I mean,
yeah.
but, yeah.
Can I just say, I just want to go back to the point Otis made about the way the hint mechanic works in this game, because I actually love it and I think it's genius. Basically, when you run through the game, let's say you've booted up, you're playing Neon White, it's the first time you drop into a new level, you'll go through and the level design does a good job of giving you cues of where you've got to go. It's very minimalistic. Reminds me a lot of Mirror's Edge in a way, if anyone remembers that game, apart from me. But it's very minimalistic, kind of blocky colours, and the game does a good job of seeking you through the level without having to have like a trail or any bullshit like that, right? So you go through and you run the level as quick as you can for your first or maybe second time, and you get a gold medal, but it's not platinum, right? And then the game could go in two directions here, right? Let's say it was your aim to get a platinum medal on every level, which is achievable and which was my aim in this game because I found it fun and I wanted to get platinum and everything. There's two ways this could have gone. Number one is that this could have, in a way, devolved into almost like a puzzle game where it's like I keep running the level and I keep getting gold. How do I get platinum? Like, I keep running it and I've saved half a second, I've saved another half second, I've saved a third of a second, but how do I get platinum? And then it would have been a case of going through the level slowly and saying, oh, okay, what if I get to this section? Do I have to do a blind jump off this ledge? No. Or let me stop here and pause and I'll look around the corner.
Also help you do that exploration as well. I don't know if you actually went for those.
Yes.
But those got really devious towards the end as well.
Yes. So it could have been that. It could have been, okay, now you have to slowly trawl through the level and you've got to see the thing you missed, which is why you can't hit this platinum rank. But the game doesn't do that. Once you get gold, actually, I think it's either when you get gold or if you've given it
gold.
Yeah. Which, let's say after a certain criteria is met, the game says we're going to drop a hint in now, which is like a floating yellow whatever token, and if you hit it, then the token shows you basically where the shortcut is on the level. And this is amazing because I didn't want Neon White to be a case of having to trawl through the level to try and find the best route available. I wanted to speedrun this as much as I could, go fast as often as I could, and having the hint there, often I didn't need it. Often you could find this yourself and you'd stumble upon it and it would make sense. You'd be like, oh, if I use the rocket launcher and I rocket jump from this platform to there, I can obviously skip this corner, right? So often I didn't need it, but in the times that I did, it was just excellent to be like, oh, there's a shortcut there. Now I can work on optimizing the route with the shortcut rather than spending my whole time slowly going through a level trying to find a shortcut, if that makes sense. I stay away from hints I try to stay away from things like hints and stuff in games. You know, they're great for new players and people that are stuck and casual players and all the rest of it. But for this one, But for this one, I just think it really works, and it means that you don't have to. There's less about theory about routing your way through a level. It's more about mechanically being good, hitting your timing, aiming at the right spot, going fast, rather than it is theorizing about what's the best way to get through this. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. When I said I was like sort of disappointed when I saw it gave me the hint, I meant that in like, it's the ultimate solution. But the fact that there's stuff beyond that sort of really cleared it up for me. And also the fact that, as you sort of alluded to there, is like as soon as you get the first shortcut, you're like slowly learning, it's drip feeding you like the level design language, if that's not too wanky a term, of like how the levels are laid out. Yeah. So you start looking for that sort of shortcut naturally. Yeah. And like by the end, exactly as you said, you end up like not actually needing a lot of shortcuts. And the way the levels are sort of designed structurally is like you do like the obvious route well, you get a gold. If you do the shortcut route well, you get the platinum or whatever the fuck it's called. And then if you are like, you know, fucking you've learned the ins and outs, you get the red one. But I think it's just such a good loop to have as a game. It's really fun.
Well, I mean, if you look at like the bronze is you're feeling at a level, and then silver and gold you're meant to be like, oh, I understand and I can do it, and then it's like, oh, you can trim off time and get the platinum, and then you have that like, oh, there's the red one, which is like, this is where you've improved beyond the people who've made you've figured, almost broke the meta in some way. And it's just like that natural, nice progression, which is quite nicely thematic for speedrunning, which I thought was really lovely. It's so great. The only problem is we have to talk about the dialogue and the story.
No, we don't. We
do have to, because it's a major part of the game and it breaks the pace horribly. It's poor. It's so bad, man. And you have to do it to then get some extra levels.
You do. What I'll say on this is that I can see the theory here, right? The levels are high intensity. There's like rock music blasting. You're going through these sort of levels. You're blasting through and go as quick as you can.
I had to take breaks for sure.
That there has to be something which pauses the action for you to then simmer down and build up to the next level. Otherwise, it's just too intense. It's just too much of a blast of the senses. So I get their theory here. Here's the theory. We'll have the speedrunning levels, and then we'll have calmer, less interactive sections, which are like visual novel bits. Unfortunately, the theory is sound. Unfortunately, the visual novel bits are just terrible. Even for a visual novel, I think of things like Pyre, if anyone remembers that, by the Bastion guys and Hades. Pyre was a bit like this, where it was like a sports game on one half and a visual novel on the other. Even if I think about things like that, or even stuff like, in a way, like
Phoenix Hades as well, right?
Hades,
like,
you're right.
You've got an intense gameplay loop followed by dialogue in the palace.
Amazing. What all these games have in common is, number one, is that the voice acting is fucking stellar, and that number two is that even though the characters are just stills, often they are animated, often there's a lot of different expressions, and they use different ones, and they can sort of make these text conversations, which is what they are with some voice acting, lively. Neon White does none of this. There's about 2 or 3 stills per character. The voice acting is like okay at best. I quite like the main character, Neon
Steve Bloom.
White.
So, yeah,
I like the main voice actor. Everyone else is a bit, I don't know, and the writing is just horrible. Like you said, they go for this kind of cringe anime vibe, but just because it's almost tongue-in-cheek cringe doesn't mean it doesn't make me cringe. Like, even if it's supposed to be like that, it's just like I don't
think I've genuinely cringed at a game before. But I definitely genuinely cringe. Not like Zoomer, oh, this is cringe, but like actual cringe at some of the dialogue in this fucking thing.
I think they aim too high with some of the themes here. It's supposed to be this. There's a story about them ascending through the layers of hell. Heaven. You're ascending through heaven, and you're supposed to be clearing out enemies from heaven as like it's like a cleaning process. You're there to clean heaven for the higher ups, but it's like half the enemies in the game just sort of float about. They don't even attack you. So it's like, what are we cleaning here? They're just docile enemies. They just sit there and sort of, and it's supposed to be like heaven. And I kind of get it from the like color palette. Everything's white and stuff, but like, it's just a very bare setting, which is great for speedrunning because you don't have time to pay attention to all the nuances. But then there's this story about going through heaven's gates and clearing heaven of all the demons, and there's the higher ups, and God exists, and God's talking to you, and it's like, oh God, it just aims so high for like what they can actually achieve. It might be like a budget issue, it's an indie game, but at the end of the day they went for this grandiose story and they told it in a weird anime way, and it completely doesn't match the gameplay in any way. And it's definitely a game of two halves in that sense.
I'll finish it off with this final thought in that most speedrunning, once you get to the point of being so good at a game, the actual story and the dialogue itself doesn't matter, and so you could generously say that this is almost encouraging you to skip the dialogue to get back to the gameplay. But the problem is, you look at his previous game and you see that the writing in that game is close-ish in nature to this. And so I just think he's an excellent game designer. Ben Esposito, I think his name is. But just a pretty shit writer, which is a shame. But here's the thing, he's so good at it that I can't wait to see what he does next. Like, Lucas Pope, I just can't wait to see what they do next. And so, yeah, Neon White, wonderful game. Everyone should play it and skip as much dialogue as possible. But I'll quickly rattle some off before we get on to the final meat. I played Moonlighter. It's shit Recettear. Didn't like it. I played Card Shark. It's a decent sort of visual novel-ish story thing on the game on the Switch where you're cheating at cards and it's teaching you how to cheat. It's cute, but there's not too much to it. Sifu, quite fun. It's a 2D brawler, but it's in a 3D environment with it evokes that feeling of the kung fu movies of old. Very in depth. I suck at it. So.
Don't compare it with God Hand, or we'll end this podcast right now.
I'm not. It is very in depth fighting. I'm sure Otis will disagree, but it's I suck at it. It's good. There is Tinykin, which is like a Paper Mario-esque Pikmin inspired game where you pick up little creatures and you throw them and they can do a thing. But it's actually not like that. It's inside a house and it's very cute and beautifully drawn and done. But the problem is there's not much to it. You just jump around and collect things, and then you collect things and you bring the things back. It's a collectathon where there's no like combat, there's no like major puzzles, there's no nothing. It's just you explore a big map and collect the things, which disappointed me. I wish if there was a little bit more to it. There was a little bit more like in Pikmin, at least when you get the things, you can use them to attack enemies or use them in different ways. There's none of that. You have the solid purpose and that's it. That's all it is for. It's a shame. It had a little bit. It could have done a bit more of it. Coromon. It's fucking Ruby and Sapphire, but made by two guys who actually like Pokemon, and it's fun. It's very fun. You should all play fucking Coromon. And that'll be me. I'll move over to you, Tom. You played a game called Draenus, didn't you?
Dr. Anus.
Dr. Anus.
Yeah, it's Dr. Anus, and but there aren't any anuses in it. So, I guess that if there are, you don't get to see them. So, that's the only criticism I have for it. It's a very good game. So yeah, no, Draenus. This is a shmup. It's a genre I've been trying to get into a bit more, and I haven't played many. I've only played like Xevious and Gradius before this. Yeah, it's really good. It's from the developers that made Toho Lunar Nights, which was a fine Metroidvania. I mentioned it very briefly in last year's podcast because that's when I played it. And they also made a game called, I think it's called Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth, which is another Metroidvania, which I've heard is actually not as good as Toho. So this is their third game. It's by far their best. I don't know how to review shmups because you just kind of shoot and dodge. But the only thing I can say about it is got a very interesting mechanic, which is where the sort of the word Draenus comes from, where you can actually absorb damage and then use it to fire back at enemies, but only certain types of attacks can be drained.
Yeah, I saw that mechanic on the Steam page, and it like as an outsider to shmups for the most part, I played a few. That is very Ikaruga-ish. I know like anyone who hasn't played shmups compares all shmups to Ikaruga, but yeah, it seems very much like that, which isn't a bad thing, I don't think.
I was about to say, I think that's supposedly similar to Ikaruga, which I have, but I haven't played yet. It's one of the shmups I want to get round to next. But it's got a very fair difficulty curve to it. It does get really difficult towards the end. But I think in terms of shmups, this is one that's relatively easy because most of them are like brutally difficult, aren't they? So it's just extremely well designed. There's great movement to it. There's an unbelievable amount of power upgrades and like customization options that you can make to your ship. I've now bought all of the upgrades, so I've got like my perfect setup that I want to finish the stages. And it's also got an interesting health system. So instead of having an energy bar or just dying in one hit, the way it works is when you get hit, you lose a power up. So you can have up to 5 power ups. Which I think you can unlock a couple of extra slots as well. and then you can customize your loadout. So whether that's an extra energy shield for like defending, or an extra weapon. So every time you touch these like disc things that fly through the air, you get a new upgrade, and you'll know what's coming next because you've designed your own loadout. But every time you get hit, you lose a power up. So like it will go down in the same order that it went up. So at the start of the level, you'll start off at like 2. You get 2 power ups by default. So if you get hit 3 times, you're dead. But then if you get your full loadout, not only have you got all of your power ups that you've assigned yourself, but you've also got more health. So there's an interesting system where your power ups are also tied to your health as well, which kind of it makes it sort of relatively easy in the early levels. But then as you get on in the second half of the game, there's some like just ridiculous boss fights where almost every inch of the screen will kill you. So in those boss fights, you need your full loadout in order to get through them. Like there's one where I got past the whole level really easily, and then the boss at the end is just this insane spider thing that crawls through the whole stage, and it drags you along with it. So it's like an auto scroller as well. And I would get to that boss with full loadout, and then he'd kill me every time. So I just have to keep replaying the level so I could get there with full loadout and then finally beat him. It's just everything about it is just like really solidly done. Like the soundtrack is excellent. It looks beautiful. It just feels like a really classic, fast, well-made shmup. There's even a boss in there which is a reference to Fantasy Zone, which I haven't played, but I knew the boss because I'd seen someone do a stream of it, like that old Sega Master System, or it might have been early Mega Drive.
Master System, yeah.
Yeah, Master System. So, and I think the second part of that boss fight is also another like classic shmup boss from an old game as well. But I wasn't sure. It looked like something from the Atari Jaguar or something. So it's clear that the developers are really passionate about shoot 'em ups. This is a really excellent game that I don't think many people have played, and the only reason that I knew about it is because I saw an article by the Metro UK saying that this is a really great shmup.
Really, Metro?
So, and I don't read the Metro. But it was just like on my browser settings, it was just like one of those like pop-ups. And I clicked on the article. I just saw the word Drainus, didn't bother reading the article, and then looked it up on Steam, and it was cheap. So I bought it, and it was one of the best games I played all year. So definitely 100% recommend. Really good game. And there's only one other game that I played this year. And that was, it wasn't even a new game, but it did come out in 2022. I don't have much to say on it, so I will do this quickly. It's Klonoa, the Fantasy Reverie series on Switch. I think it's on all the platforms, but I've got the Switch version. It's just a remake of the original Klonoa and Klonoa 2. Klonoa 1 is one of the best PlayStation games that I ever played. It's really like beautiful, interesting platformer. And the sequel's excellent as well, which is quite similar. This might be worth getting just because Klonoa 2 never got ported. And I think that both Klonoa 1 and Klonoa 2, the original games, are extremely expensive to buy secondhand. Even if you've got a PS2 laying around, this might be like the best way to play these games now. The original version on PS1 was sprite-based with some 3D environments. So it's sort of 2.5D and had a gimmick where you could throw objects into the background and foreground. But aside from that, it was just like a standard platformer, but it was extremely charming and just had no filler at all. It was like 14 levels long. All the levels were great, and there was no downtime in it at all, and there was no low spots. With the remakes, the only thing I've got to say about it is like if you've got the original version, there's no point playing it. And they've also revamped the sprite graphics to be just a standard, like new polygonal. It's like fully 3D now rather than with sprite-based characters. And it removes a lot of the charm from the original game. In terms of gameplay, it's the same. So that puts it above a lot of remakes. It's like 100 times better than that Ratchet & Clank remake or Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, because gameplay-wise, they have preserved it. But I think a lot of the quality in that game was the fact that it was its charm, and it's lost all of its character with the new art direction. Like the game looks fine, but it's just the art direction. It also includes a hard mode and also includes an extra 100% thing if you collect enough gems in the stage. But neither of these things are fun, and it just adds clutter to the game. And like I said, part of the reason why the original Klonoa was such a masterpiece is that there was no clutter at all. There was no filler. There was nothing added just to make the levels longer. And the 100% condition that's new to this remake is collecting like 200 gems per level. And gems are like the equivalent of coins. So it's like, imagine a 2D Mario game where there was like, if you wanted 100%, you had to collect every coin in the level. That's what it's like. It's just a ball ache. So I'm not impressed. But this may be the only way to play the Klonoa games. So if you can't find them online, then I guess you better buy this remaster. But it's not very good.
Glowing review there. Right.
I played some bad games on Switch. Sorry, go on, Otis.
Yeah. I mean, okay, I'm gonna have to do it. I'm gonna have to go on the defensive a little bit here. I'm Jesus on the cross, and everyone hates him because he was right. I'm gonna talk about a game series that I've been putting off for many years because I thought I'd like it too much, and it turns out I was right. But it's not a bad thing to enjoy games, as I've fucking found out with this game. I'm talking about Monster Hunter. I'm talking about Monster Hunter Rise, and I'm talking about Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak is the best game that I played this year that came out this year. And the reason for that is because it is sort of like, again, I hate to do the whole comparison thing, but it is sort of like the perfect middle ground between Dark Souls and a character action game like Devil May Cry. Like, it has the replayability of, well, both of them, I suppose, but like with a structure where it's just a boss rush, and in addition to that, you're also just like trying to create these insane builds, and you're constantly getting materials for these things. But what sets it apart from something like, you know, I guess the comparison is, as Matt fucking snarkily said, Genshin Impact, or fucking, I don't know anything about Genshin Impact, or Destiny, or any like live service game like that. I think the difference between it is like, when people talk about Destiny, all they talk about is like the gear. They don't talk about the fights themselves. They're just like, oh, Bungie have fucked it up this time. Like, no one actually talks about the gameplay. But with Monster Hunter, as I said, it's very character action-y. So in addition to this grind loop, this really satisfying, may I add, grinding loop, you've also got the element of like actual mastery. Because like, you are getting better like numbers when you level up, and you're getting like crazy combinations that do all sorts of like elemental damage that's weak to like super effective on certain parts of the monster and stuff like that. But you're also like learning the individual fights themselves. And what sort of enhances that a lot is that this game is sort of unique to Rise specifically, like compared to other Monster Hunters, but the roll doesn't actually have many iframes at all. It's like 4 iframes or something like that. So you're not just like reacting to the monster and then like rolling through it like you would with Dark Souls. You actually have to like learn these things' movements, like all of their attacks, slowly learn it, and like actually be out of the way preemptively. Because you're grinding it so much, you actually learn to do that. And when you like dodge the fucking hip checks that they all have, and like, he's gonna do a hip check, I'm fucking out of there. It's so fucking satisfying. And the fact that and like there's no limit to it, you don't have to like replay the whole game again, like with Dark Souls, to play the boss again. It's so fucking good. And
I've always, I mean, because that's it. When Matt brought up like live service, and it's certainly like Monster Hunter always seemed like that loop, very grindy, did evoke that live servicey feel. But I do get the feeling everyone who's spoken about it is like, fuck, the actual fighting and the loot is so brilliant. It's like, when they're like, oh shit, they're bringing back a monster in DLC and everybody loses their shit. I was like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah,
but there's clearly a reason
as well. But I totally get it now. And also, like in addition to what I just said, like there's 20 weapons. I might be wrong, like 18 or something like that. So like in addition to like learning all of the fights against all the monsters in the game, you've also got the fight is, you approach the fight completely differently depending on which weapon you pick, which is very like fighting gamey, to be honest, because you will approach it differently, that you have different combos, you have different moves and stuff. And long story short, like Sunbreak just improved the base Rise like drastically, just adding loads of new moves that just made everything so much better. Like Rise was the first Most High game I played. I was like, oh, this is fucking sick. But then Sunbreak came out, and because there were detractors to Rise, like the base game, but once Sunbreak came out, everyone was like, actually, this is fucking sick. And I realized, like, yeah, this is a fucking good ass game that you can just play, just plonk it on, and kill some hunt some mons, as they say.
It definitely is that, like, I mean, you say it's a series that I could foresee me sinking a whole bunch of time into, which is why I've never touched that. I've never touched like World of Warcraft or fucking Final Fantasy 14, you know, or anything that I'm like, I could see myself, you know, this is only one game and it's like 150 hours of just like consistent. I could see myself sinking into this, which is, you know, and you've taken the plunge, I'm afraid, which is why we lost you for like a month. But I mean,
my Steam replay shit is like a massive spike at the start for Oxygen Not Included, then a massive spike in the middle for Monster Hunter, and then like nothing in between. It's pretty funny.
Is there like another big game coming out, or is it just like patches to? Because I have no idea anything. I was like, there's loads of Monster Hunter games everywhere. I just don't know.
We're calling it live service. It's not really, because there's not like page. You're not like buying like equipment or anything. You can buy cosmetics, but like that's just fucking par for the course these days, isn't it? Like so like they are adding free monster updates. I think they're still doing it as well, so they add like a major content update, title update every few months, and it's sort of like, it's weird, like it's a whole new area of games that just have completely eluded me, and it's sort of like the Pokemon of Capcom and action games, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because they have like two teams. One does the console ones, one does the handheld ones.
Yeah.
And this is like the handheld part of this generation. And World before it was the console version of this generation. So like trades off between them. There's like stylistic differences between them. It's very much like a legacy game. Like there's constant like references and callbacks and things they cut out and things they bring back in, which is why everyone loses their shit. So it's something that I'm happy to now be a part of, I suppose. And yeah, great game, good co-op as well, even with like randomers, as long as they don't fucking triple cut and make me fucking lose like 20 minutes of my time. So yeah, game of the year, unironically, for me.
Fair enough. I mean, you know, I could see myself if I was unemployed and or
well, you got 5 more days, Jazz.
Yeah, maybe. No, I can't.
No, I don't think you'll like it. I don't think you'll like it.
Okay, well,
no.
Game of the year, you wouldn't like it. You've said that for the last couple of years. Yep. Fair enough. Well, that doesn't leave us much left. So I suppose we'll go on to what I would consider.
What could we have been saving for this whole podcast? What game came out in 2022?
My game of the year.
I don't think so. No, I think
my game of the year, which we're going to talk about, is Stacklands. By the way, Stacklands, cute little game, very quick.
Cute little game. Yeah. 3 hours or something.
3 hours, sorry.
Decent.
Let's talk about Elden Ring. Matt, you can mute your microphone if you fucking want, because you don't want to hear any spoilers. Because for some reason,
come out this year.
Yeah. Because for some reason, Matt, you just refuse to play things in the zeitgeist.
This is the only year we haven't had a FromSoft review from Matt, actually. I was surprised he didn't do Sekiro by the end of it, but here we are.
So am I. It's in the works. I'll get there. It's coming.
Matt's making that 12-hour video.
You go ahead.
Okay. I know you've cooled your opinions on Elden Ring a bit, Otis, but like, I do still believe it's an unbelievable game, because it's FromSoft, you know, and it's just like it's FromSoft like inflated times like 20, and then it's just like where you can see the repeated parts. That's the only parts that like, you know, make it creak under its weight. But Elden Ring, those crazy bastards in Japan, they took the Dark Souls and made it into an open world.
They took Breath of the Wild and put content in it.
What? With actual combat.
This is controversial corner.
Yeah, it's just a.
I love Breath of the Wild for the record.
Yeah,
I love Breath of the Wild as well.
No,
Game.
so I get it. I love Breath of the Wild too, but I could see how much it could be improved when I played it. And then Elden Ring is, this is what I wanted Breath of the Wild to be. And it's like, and now all I can see is like when I go forward, what I would like from like DLC or another Breath, like if there's a fucking another Elden Ring or something.
We said like, when Breath of the Wild came out, like both of us said that like Hyrule Castle at the end was the best part.
Yes,
it's just a big ass battle dungeon basically. We're not like the typical Zelda dungeon, but it's just like a big ass fucking area.
You can go any way you wanted.
Yeah, and that's sort of what Elden Ring is like. And it's also got the shrines thrown in for good measure, which have the exact same problem as the shrines. But
it's
you do
dense,
your good stuff first.
It's dense, which is, I mean, the map is unfucking fathomably big, and it's dense. There is so much shit in it, and it's that juicy Dark Souls combat, but it's like it's refined, and it's got loads of different things you can do with it. This is like it. This is like your customizable fucking Dark Souls playthrough in a massive world. It's fucking unbelievable. I think the horse mechanics are actually pretty good. Like a really clever idea. They're quite detailed and they let you traverse areas quicker and different. I think it really works well. I like how it goes from open world and then funnels into legacy areas with more traditional Dark Souls areas. Some of the bosses are fucking unbelievable and really innovate. And to top it off, I genuinely think, and I'm not saying this unironically, I think it's one of the most beautiful games I've ever played in my life. I think it's it's stunning. The art style mixed with the setting and the like composition of like different elements in the background, the sky's colouring. It makes it seem almost like a Metroidvania in how they colour it at certain areas and have that like those landmarks. It's peak FromSoft. It's really, everything is so good here. It's just like the things that are the problem, which we all know, and people have spoken about this many times. They repeat some bosses. I know it's not like as bad as like fucking I'm playing God of War at the moment and they've repeated the same troll boss like 16 times. But they actually.
Oh, don't get me started on that fucking game.
But at least they do. Like mix up the mechanics of how each of these same bosses fight in some way. They have a different moveset in some ways. They have a different like arena you'd fight them in. There's some sort of care to it, and some builds. When you just thrown into the map, you're like, fuck, how do I buy some? I fucked us both over with sorcery stuff right at the start.
Yeah, fuck you.
Yeah, and it's like, there's so much stuff spread about, but because you don't know where your stuff will be, like, you go for a hard dungeon, you're like, oh, great, and then you pick up, this is a fucking longsword or whatever, and I'm like, I just want a fucking spell, and so it's, it's kind of difficult at the start, but those inevitably have to happen with the transition from a Dark Souls to an Elden Ring. So
so I'm not gonna come here and say that Elden Ring is a bad game because it's absolutely not a bad game. It puts all other AAA open world games to shame. In that it actually has intricate gameplay, the Souls gameplay that we all know and love, and it's fucking unbelievably massive and done really well. The problem that I have with it, and it's sort of, I've had like almost a year to mull on it now, and I still don't really know how to sum it up. But like, I think I don't actually like Souls games. I just like Dark Souls and Bloodborne, like genuinely, because like this did not do it for me.
Sure,
it did not do it for me. Like I played it for over 100 hours. It was doing something right. But then as soon as it, like, there were certain parts where it's just like, obviously Souls got harder as I went on. And I'm not going to fucking complain like, the game's too fucking hard, because I don't think it is too hard. I just think there's some genuinely, like, I don't want to say unfair, because it sounds really whiny. But like, there's certain obviously everyone knows Melania. Everyone knows fucking what's big horse man. I forgot what he's called. Radahn.
Yeah.
Everyone, infamous Radahn, infamous Melania Trump. I can't remember. I can't believe I forgot her name because she said it every fucking time that she killed me.
Yeah.
But anyway, so anyway, I thought they obviously have some really bullshit moves, right? Melania has the big ass waterfowl dance.
Yeah.
Radahn has just like barrage, blah 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 blah. You're dead. You can't do anything. So, and the thing that I liked about Dark Souls and Bloodborne is like there always seemed to be not too difficult an answer to every single move in every boss. Whereas this one, I don't know if I'm just fucking old now or something, but like I couldn't find joy in trying to find that in this game. And I have no idea why. Like none of the bosses really spoke to me much at all, except fucking no. Well, that's the other thing. Well, Godfrey. I'll get onto that. No, what the fuck is Godfrey? Yeah, Godfrey is cool just because he's a fucking Street Fighter grappler. He's Hagar, and then Radagon just for the aesthetic.
Yeah.
Immediately ruined by Elden Beast, but anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I didn't find any of it enjoyable. Like when I first booted up the first session, I was miserable at the end, and then I sort of tried to find joy in it by just sort of taking my time more, and then for a big chunk of it, I was genuinely enjoying it. Then towards the end, I sort of started to get burnt out on it. And then when I started a second playthrough, all of the things that I found cool the first time around were now just work in the way of getting into the end of the game. I don't think that's ever happened to me in a Souls game before. Like when I play Dark Souls, replay Dark Souls or Bloodborne, I'm enjoying every moment leading up to the good parts. Like not that the things before it are bad. Well, some parts are obviously, and like that especially rang true with fucking Snake Boy. Like the first time, that's such a spectacle. Yeah. But the second time, the first time I was like, okay, they've done that gimmick again, but they fucking done it right. The second time, I realized, wait a minute, that the move where he just sends the skulls after you for a solid minute. You can't do anything except just run around him. You can't dodge through it. You can't attack him while he's doing it. You just have to run for a solid minute. And because the DPS is set, because you have to use the gimmick weapon, it's just a fucking slog of a boss fight. And then that sort of tainted my entire view of every other boss that I played. And I couldn't bring myself to finish my second playthrough. And as a result, I sort of like chalked it up to, it's the Outer Wilds effect, in that you're so taken aback by the spectacle of the world, like the vastness, that, oh, they've fucking done it. They've done Dark Souls and Breath of the Wild, but it's something new in addition to all of that. And like that, I feel like that's a one-time deal for me. It's like, well, you've done really good. I'm glad that it's got a lot of people interested in the Souls series. But like, yeah, it's not for me, I'm afraid.
No, I actually think I can maybe try and contextualize why that is, because I can completely understand that. So in Dark Souls and Bloodborne are very special to us. They molded us as like fucking people who love games. And it's a linear, singular, beautiful vision where it's punishingly difficult and you feel like you can still fight the boss in a normal way. And it's that boss. It's always the boss coming up, and you can prepare how it's going to be in a very relatively linear fashion through this aesthetic world that is quite. It's much shorter than Elden Ring, so it's much more tailored to its like narrative and what it's trying to go for. Whereas Elden Ring is very much like, oh, there may be a boss that's much more tough, much more spongy. Or go elsewhere, fight other things. There's lots more Dark Soulsy combat, which can be draining because the highs aren't as high. If that makes sense, like because there's like 20 bosses in Bloodborne, most of them unique, and then it's like, oh fuck, you go through this area, you fight, it's like different. Whereas like Elden Ring is just so much of it. It's like imagine having Dark Souls and Bloodborne are that Michelin star course, that like taster menu. It's all beautiful. I'm sure every single course is like a 10 out of 10, beautiful. But maybe like you're satisfied at the end. Elden Ring is like every food you love times 100. You could just keep going, you're satisfied. But like there are certain parts of it that aren't like they just don't reach that high because there's so much of it and there's so many different things to do that some of the stuff gets drowned out as well. And I like you say with Riker as a boss, like I do get that. Like they have tried to make a lot of the major spectacle fights more spectacly, as opposed to like functioning mechanic.
Fucking giant.
Yeah, so like I get it. You want to innovate and make a new mechanical thing. You want to try and do something different. But like there isn't too many different ways you can approach the boss. Like Riker, you can't approach it too many different ways. Radahn was wonderful at the start. It's obviously very tough, but like the mechanic itself was really interesting. But there isn't, and like Millennia, it's starting to funnel everyone to the same sort of ways to do it, as opposed to like, oh, I can do it with my playstyle, do it a different way. There's different things to it. Which is, you know,
they did sort of steer away from that after Dark Souls 1, because Dark Souls 1 was the last real game where you could sort of tank and use a shield. But obviously it's now all dodging and shit.
Yeah.
And I don't think the funneling is really that big an issue for me, but you are right. I think it does, like Millennia especially, like you have to play it a certain way. You look at fucking Let Me Solo Her. He's doing the same thing every time. He's just using a katana. No,
well,
I mean, respect to the man, but you know, it is what it is. It's a dodge roll.
It's not like every boss is designed so that you can fight them with different styles and there are different things you could do. It's just like, I think it is just because they put so much out there that they had to, you know, and then to make them all interesting, they had to just like almost scattershot, put them all out in a way that isn't like not as intricately carved as every you know, previous FromSoft game would be, but what they do is brilliant game design, and everything's brilliant. Everything is brilliant. It's just like, we've got that Dark Souls experience. It's never going to be, you know, Elden Ring is not better than Bloodborne or Dark Souls to me. But like, it's just like, damn, it's really good. And it's like...
It's definitely brilliant to discover and play for the first time.
Yeah.
Like going down the lift and like, oh fuck, there's another map. And like you think you're like getting towards the end of the game, and then you're like, wait a minute, there's a whole nother section of the map that I haven't been to yet.
Yeah.
And then like, oh, there's actually another one after that as well.
Yeah, I know.
But that is a one-time deal is the problem, but it's still very fucking good for a single playthrough.
Which is what Zelda Breath of the Wild had as a problem, in that it's amazing when you first play through that 200 hours, you're like, fuck, that's amazing. But because all the reveals and the secrets are done, upon playing the second time, there is less of a charm because you've had the reveal. And you've had that with Elden Ring. And the idea of Elden Ring is just... The thing is it's more intricately designed on, you can replay it and do different things. But it's not... Yeah, it's just... The spectacle itself is part of the magic. And once you've seen the spectacle, once you've seen, you know... That's why I'm really excited for the DLC. But will I play the DLC again afterwards? Who knows? I mean, I can't... I love this game. I'm trying not to sound like we're down on this game, because it's maybe in my top 10. Because it's just... Games aren't made like this. But, like, it's just like once you get that taste for, like, perfection, it's these little things add up. And it's just like, you know, it was something like 100 hours of 9 out of 10 real enjoyment. But, like, yeah, it's something that happens when you have such a large open world game in the manner that this and Breath of the Wild have done it. You can't have your cake and eat it entirely, you know.
Now here's one. Do we think that Tears of the Kingdom can beat Elden Ring?
No.
Even I don't think that.
People have spoken. the people have spoken.
I genuinely thought
I'm just the moderator. I'm a Dark Souls virgin.
Yeah,
I just wanted to,
and
an actual virgin.
I thought right from the start, like Tears of the Kingdom, I was like, oh no, they're making a sequel to Breath of the Wild in the same world. But that means they're going to use the same world, and obviously they're doing the sky stuff and they're changing up some of the world. But from the trailers, there's certain areas of the world that are the same as Breath of the Wild, and that makes me go, oh no.
Yeah.
Because
you can only hope they do like a Majora's Mask creative reworking.
I'm sure they've been spending 6 fucking years on this game. I'm sure they ain't gonna miss. But I'm just worried that the special reveals of the world aren't. There's going to be. I know what to expect in some areas. There's not going to be a completely new, interesting world to find, but. I think I'll really enjoy the next Zelda, but it's never going to touch the first experience of Breath of the Wild. It's never going to touch the first experience for Elden Ring.
Anyway, shall we wrap this up quickly?
Yeah.
So Elden Ring, like, don't get me wrong, it's clearly a very good game. It is not what I wanted it to be, and I still recommend it to people, and I'm glad it's got people into it. It's just, yeah, not my cup of tea. You say I can't have my cake and eat it, but I just want a fucking single slice of cake, please. Just a single crumb.
Fair enough. I did love it. I've played it through twice, and I've on a third playthrough at some point. I love it. It gives me that high, that dopamine that I love from Dark Souls, and it's a magic to enjoy. And you know, most people who play it for the first time, you'll feel what a real fucking game is. That sounds fucking, a bit
very gatekeepy.
Yeah, but then I'll wistfully look back on Bloodborne and Dark Souls probably more than I will in Elden Ring. But Elden Ring's nipping at those heels because of how you just have to applaud it for how it's made and designed. You have to applaud, like, I can't believe they pulled it off. Is the real...
It is unbelievable. It's like a feat of, like, just that it exists.
Just pure gameplay and game design. Whereas it's, it's...
Yeah, it's not a fucking bog standard AAA nonsense shit.
No.
They did it. They did it, Reddit.
Yeah, they did it. But it's, that's it. It's like...
I don't like what it is, I suppose, is the gist.
I get it. No, I get it. It's great that it exists, but it's we're a long way from Kansas. We can't put the rabbit back in the box, basically. Yeah. So.
Sorry, I feel like I fucking bummed you out.
It feels a bit no, because I completely agree, and I had those feelings. It's just I've learned to just be like, that first playthrough, that first magic and experience is what I will remember for the game.
This is an established trend, though. Like, I tend to enjoy replayable games. You tend to enjoy one-time games. So there you go.
Oh, for certain, yeah.
Sort of sums it up.
Yeah.
But you know what, Jazz? Once the toothpaste is out of the tube, you can't put it back in.
It's exactly. Unless of course, it's in
and
my
once, and once the year ends, you can't go back. So here's to 2023. And what do we all think?
Depressing.
What did we all think of 2022? I thought in terms of games.
In terms of games.
Yeah.
In terms of not games, it was pretty fucking sick for me. In terms of games, it was like middling.
Yeah.
Except for the few games I got really obsessed with. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I always just sort of like hope that indies do it every year. And to be fair, they've done it for the last couple of years. There's always been an indie game where I've been like, fuck, that's so good. I'm assuming it will probably happen next year as well. Now that I think the COVID sort of period is sort of done, and like gameplay will resume as much as it will.
Yeah. Hopefully 2023 will be the first genuinely great year for games since 2019. I think for me, 2022 was just a year where a couple of great games came out and a few decent ones, and that's it.
It's better than 2021, where we were like, I guess Metroid Dread.
Yeah, I guess there was a
Metroid
DLC
Dread
to
won by
Outer Wilds.
default. Yeah. As a full game, Metroid Dread won last year by default, and as I said last year, if that's the best game of the year, as much as it is a great game, but if that's the best game of the entire year, that's not a good year.
I mean, look, I got
And,
Tunic and I got fucking Elden Ring. You know, I am happy. I've gotten the good shit. But like, yeah, I am starting to think I'm getting less and less enjoyable experiences. There's more middling to bad experiences now.
You old fogey.
Yeah.
You old bitch.
Yeah.
But you know what, guys?
Pikmin 4.
2023.
Pikmin fucking 4. Let's fucking go. Pikmin 4. It's
2023 is our year. 2023 is our year to not play Pikmin 4, and then we have to listen to Jazz talk about it on next year's podcast.
damn fucking right. Well,
Bye, everyone.
thanks,
Happy
everyone.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.